Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app. We are live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators in action tonight hosting the Florida Panthers. Puck drop at 7 o'clock, and all of your pregame coverage starting right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game at 6 p.m. D-Mase, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
Forgot what you looked like.
Yeah, I mean, goodness.
Forgot what outside looked like.
Absolutely. I'm like, man, who is this at the desk with me?
Nice to meet you.
Hey, my name's Derek Caroline. But we, come out of, Ice-Mageddon or Snow-Mageddon, and then our first show is in a snow rink or ice rink.
In an ice rink, yeah. We just simply cannot seem to escape.
We can't get away from it.
It's an ice rink in the street in front of my house. It's an ice rink right in front
The
of us.
Preds could have played in front of my yard.
I saw people.
On the street.
Sarah Giles, who does social media for the Predators, I saw she was skating on a pond over the weekend. And I'm about, it made me a little nervous.
I don't want to do that. No.
But yeah, since when was this Manitoba?
I don't know.
Since when was this the great Arctic?
I don't know. I mean, I told you they wanted to be the South, the North so bad, then they had to experience it for a week. No, I don't want to be the North. North is great. I love it in the summer, spring, in some parts of the fall, but not during the winter.
Not in the wintertime. Absolutely not. Another cold one. Stay safe out there and stay warm as well. We had a blast of a divisional round this past weekend. Got the Niners and the Lions heading to the NFC Championship game, and the Ravens and the Chiefs as well. And, of course, the Chiefs and the Bills, whenever they face off in the playoffs, we know it's going to be an instant classic. Last night was no different. We'll get into all of that, our reaction from the divisional round of the playoffs, how the Titans can kind of mimic maybe the model that we've seen the Texans take, where you're pretty much horrendous, one of the worst teams in the league one year, turn around, make it to the divisional round the next. We'll get into all of that. But first, we get into the next saga of the Titans coaching search. So this was coming out today. Now, Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, had an in-person interview scheduled for today. Now, that would have been his second interview with the Tennessee Titans. It came out today, this morning, that Thomas Brown, Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator, also will be doing an in-person interview, also his second interview with the Tennessee Titans. Now, we know that the Titans interviewed in person David Shaw this past weekend. So after the Titans interview Thomas Brown in person, that will satisfy the Rooney Rule, because the Titans would have interviewed two external minority candidates in an in-person interview. Also, after the news of Thomas Brown interviewing with the Tennessee Titans, it was also announced that Dan Quinn will interview with the Titans for his second interview, an in-person interview. Of course, Dan Quinn, Dallas Cowboys defensive coordinator. Now, D-Mase, I think that this Thomas Brown interview can mean a few different things. First and foremost, Titans are interested in Thomas Brown, that they really liked what they heard from Thomas Brown in his first interview, that they like what they have seen from his resume as a whole. Let's dig into that one before we get into what else that this could mean for the Tennessee Titans. First and foremost, if the Titans are interested in Thomas Brown as a candidate, how would you feel about that? How do you feel about Thomas Brown as a candidate?
At first, I looked at it and, legitimately say, well, are they really trying to just satisfy, the Rooney Rule here? Because I'm just looking at sort of the coaching experience and how he went down. But then, I got very corrected by a friend, and they said, he said, Thomas Brown is a legit candidate. Sean McVay ties. No one credits him for that. But was McVay assistant head coach, running backs coach, and eventually tight ends coach. Okay. So if we are to believe that McVay is like this genius of a offensive coordinator / head coach, which he's proven like, hey, he knows what he's doing at that position.
Yeah.
Then, you gotta, when that is said, you gotta sit and pause for a second and really think like, okay, that's a great point, because, you don't follow these coaches. When these new names come up, other than, if you are a Brad Johnson, it's Brad Johnson from Detroit, their offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson, excuse me.
Brad Johnson, the quarterback.
Yeah, Brad Johnson's the quarterback for the old Buffalo Bills. And he won a Super Bowl, I believe, with Tampa Bay. Yep. So when you're talking about names like that, sexy names like that, everybody knows. Like, okay, I can, the name comes up, I know where he's been, and then you see the fruit of what he's been able to do with the Lions or not Kansas City, but Cincinnati's offensive coordinator. You sort of see the fruits of that. But then you start seeing other guys, and you're like, man, I didn't even know that his name would be in the mix for any coaching job, and you really don't pay attention to who they've coached under or who they've coached with, how much input they've had in certain situations where they've been. And maybe it's slowly coming out for me. It's like, okay, this dude he's been with some winning organizations. He's done some good things. He's been, obviously, him being in Carolina's offensive coordinator, that whole thing was a debacle.
Yeah.
That whole Carolina thing was a debacle. Whether you blame it on Frank Wright or you blame it on the quarterback or whoever, compiled this collection of personnel and players. Who do you blame? GM, head coach, who do you blame? So he gets kind of rolled up in that. Like, okay, everybody that was on that staff, I don't want to touch because it looked bad. But we don't know exactly who it really was. But if you're looking at it from past history, well, Frank Wright went to Indianapolis, and then it didn't work out very well. Then he goes to Carolina, and it still doesn't work out well. So I can sort of point to Frank Wright as possibly being the problem because he's the common denominator in both. So when you look at a guy like Thomas Brown, when you hear the name and you know where he came from, automatically you're like, nope, I don't want to touch him. But then you start to do a little homework and you say, okay, he coached and was an assistant head coach under who we believe, other than Andy Reid, is the best offensive mind in the game right now. He had to have learned something. He had to have had a hand in that, just like Eric Bieniemy. He had to have had a hand. That offense looked totally different without Eric Bieniemy. Now, they're getting their stuff straight in Kansas City now. But that offense looked totally different without Eric Bieniemy calling it for the Kansas City Chiefs. So you look at Thomas Brown, and you think, is he a guy that can come in and be not only a leader of men, but he can be that offensive mind that ushers this Tennessee Titan who has been longing for that guy. They had it for a quick minute with Arthur Smith, and ever since then, they've been longing for that coordinator. I'm talking about within the last 10 years.
Right.
They've been longing for that coordinator. LaFleur only stayed a year. It didn't look great with LaFleur, but we see what LaFleur is doing in Green Bay now. They've been longing for that offensive-minded coach, that guy that can get them over the hump. He may just be the guy. They're bringing him in for a second interview. That means a lot. If somebody brings you in for a second interview, that means they like you. Whatever you're saying in these interviews, they are liking you so much that they're bringing you back to pick your brain even more.
So, and here's my thing with Thomas Brown. That when you look at this past year with Carolina, I could point to several different things and say, well, poor Thomas Brown didn't have much to work with. I mean, when your number one pass catcher is Adam Thielen, when you have an offensive that you haven't really given him anything around it, and then you have an offensive-minded head coach in Frank Reich that just simply cannot seem to take his grubby mitts off of the offense. I mean, there's not really a lot that's working in Thomas Brown's favor. And look, you just mentioned Matt LaFleur, how he got a head coaching opportunity even when the Tennessee Titans offense didn't look amazing or elite. Mike Vrabel is another one. The Texans defense was bad when Vrabel was coordinating the defense, but he got a head coaching opportunity. So it's not necessarily, a clear-cut path that the only formula to becoming a head coach is that you are a coordinator and you coordinate either an elite offense or an elite defense, and that leads you into a head coaching opportunity. That absolutely is a path. It's not the only path. But my thing with Thomas Brown is What about his body of work shows me and proves to me that he is ready to be a head coach? He was the assistant head coach with the Rams. Sean McVay is running the program, really, a majority.
He's the
Other than
head
the
coach.
offense, he runs the offense. He's the head
Yes.
coach. He's running the show. In Carolina, yes, there was a lot working against Thomas Brown, but I didn't see anything from that Carolina offense. I don't know Thomas Brown personally. I haven't seen, the way that he was able to work with Bryce Young, but I didn't see Bryce Young get any better. I didn't see the offense get any better day over day over day. What shows me that if today, hypothetically, Thomas Brown is named the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, what about his history says, okay, this is what the Titans are going to be moving forward? That Thomas Brown hasn't called plays for a majority of his career. Frank Reich called plays for the most part this past year in Carolina, that he didn't call plays with the Rams. Now, you don't have to be a play caller to be the next head coach. Brian Callahan doesn't call plays in Cincinnati. But the difference to me with Brian Callahan is that we have seen Jake Browning take that massive step forward that I thought once Joe Burrow went down with an injury, I thought, man, this Bengals team is going to be absolutely atrocious. And they missed the playoffs. But that also was due to losing a lot of games at the beginning of the season when Joe Burrow wasn't 100%. And I thought really for the most part, Jake Browning showed a lot of promise. That Jake Browning didn't look like a backup at all times. That sometimes, I looked at the screen and thought, since when was Joe Burrow number 8? I thought he was number 9. So I think that's kind of the difference for me, is that you don't necessarily have to be a play caller, because Brian Callahan hasn't been, but he at least has enough of a body of work of working with young quarterbacks and helping develop young quarterbacks that I don't necessarily see with Thomas Brown. It's more of an experience thing for me with Thomas Brown, that he's young and he's rather inexperienced, hasn't had a ton of ownership over one side of the ball for me to say that is my number one front runner. So again, the news of the day coming out this morning that Thomas Brown is coming to Tennessee for his second interview, his first in-person interview, which of course would satisfy the Rooney Rule as far as the Tennessee Titans are concerned. So that could be one thing. Is one side of this is the Titans really like Thomas Brown and are seriously considering Thomas Brown, if not for a head coaching position, a coaching position in general on the roster, whether it's OC, whatever it might be, and we can get into that. The second thing that I think that this could mean is the Titans have their guy. The Titans know who they want to hire. Brian Callahan and Dan Quinn are both coming in today for second interviews. And that Thomas Brown is coming in for that in-person interview so the Titans can check their boxes, satisfy the Rooney Rule, and go ahead and move forward in hiring their next head coach, whether it's Brian Callahan or Dan Quinn.
Yeah, they have a plethora of guys that, they can potentially hire, but do they have one or two, maybe 3 guys that are at the top of their list? Obviously, one would assume that if you're bringing a guy back for a second interview, then he would be one of those guys at the top of your list. Then you talk about Brian Johnson, Bobby Slowick, guys like that they want to bring in or have talked to already. So
they haven't talked to Ben Johnson.
They haven't talked to Ben Johnson
which is
yet.
interesting.
No, they did. They did. Titans complete interview with Brian Johnson. I was thinking Brian Johnson for the Eagles.
OC.
Yeah, Ben Johnson. Too many damn Johnsons.
There's a lot of
around.
Johnsons, a lot of B first names.
Exactly. So I'm sure they want to get an interview with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson.
Lions OC.
Right, exactly. They want to get an interview with Lions OC, but obviously he's in the NFC Championship game, and maybe the Lions just don't want to go down that road just yet. Let him concentrate on getting to the Super Bowl before, you even speak to him or try to bring him in. I don't know how
he has interviewed with other teams.
Yeah, I don't know how that rule works. So he has interviewed with other teams. Maybe the Titans don't see him. They would love to have him, but realistically, would they be able to get him from Detroit before someone else gets him? Maybe that's their thought process. But I think they're going to have to find their coach. Even though you want them to take their time, they're going to have to find their coach very soon here. I think within the next week and a half.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be done by the end of this week. You got Senior Bowl coming up pretty soon. What is it? They start this weekend, I think. Next week.
They start next week. Senior Bowl practices.
Senior Bowl practices. So that's going to be, that it's going to be critical for the Titans to start narrowing down, who they want to be their coach. Again, they've had several interviews with different coaches. They've had, back-to-back interviews with one or two guys. But I think eventually they want to narrow it down to one or two people, and then hopefully by Senior Bowl or during Senior Bowl, they can have their head coach in place. The most important thing is for you to have your GM in place. They have their GM in place. Now they need to find that next head coach, and I think they need to find them within the next 10 days.
How would you rank these three candidates? Brian Callahan, Bengals OC, Dan Quinn, Cowboys DC, and Thomas Brown, Carolina Panthers OC. How would you rank those three candidates that are coming in for their second interview and of your choice for the Titans' next head coach?
So we got Cincinnati, Dallas, and Carolina. So we got Thomas. I got to get these names right. Quinn.
It's a lot.
And Johnson. Okay?
Callahan.
Callahan. Yeah, guys, I get these damn Callahan. Okay. My top candidate, just based upon, again, do you want an offensive-minded guy or do you want a defensive-minded guy? I think if you poll just about every Titan fan, they're like, get us a offensive-minded coach in here. Okay,
what do you think? What would
so
you
that
want?
that takes away Dan Quinn. In today's game, I think you have to be both in a situation like this for the Titans. I think for the Titans. Now, other teams can possibly get away with it. But we saw when the Titans hired a quote-unquote defensive-minded guy. Well, two of his offensive coordinators end up leaving. One after 1 year in LaFleur, and then Arthur Smith was there with him, 2 years?
2 years.
And then he ended up going. And we see where their offense continued to go downhill.
And you ended up with Todd Downing.
And you ended up with Todd Downing. And now you got Tim Kelly, which was an upgrade, I thought, but he didn't have much to work with. That's another guy. And I don't know. I know they don't want to go that route. We're possibly bringing in another Vrabel guy because I'm sure he would go with Vrabel wherever Vrabel go. But Tim Kelly's not a bad guy to interview either. I like Tim Kelly as an offensive play caller.
Yeah.
He just didn't have much to work with. But if I'm looking at these guys and I'm looking at the body of work and I'm saying I want an offensive coordinator, offensive-minded coach, but I want that offensive-minded coach to be also a leader of men because we've seen offensive-minded coaches that get the job and it goes bad very quickly, i.e. Josh McDaniels went bad for him twice.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah, and it was really bad.
They couldn't get rid of him fast enough.
Exactly. So to me, if I'm putting this list together, then it would be Callahan first, Thomas, and then Quinn. I think Quinn is the safe pick. I look at him like he's the safe
Is
pick.
safe also code for boring?
It's like he's
or
not
the wrong choice?
Exactly. He's a safe pick, a guy that he knows defenses. He's been around the league a long time. He's had his stint, I believe, as head coach in this league. So he's been there, done that, understands what that position entails. So he's the safe pick. Like, if all those other guys got jobs, Dan Quinn, it wouldn't be like we wouldn't be sitting here throwing a parade, but it's like, okay, Dan Quinn.
It might be more of a riot than a parade.
It's like, okay, Dan Quinn's not bad, but it's not who I wanted, but he's a safe pick. But to me, Callahan, because of look at what he's been able to do. Now, I would love to have, Bobby Slowik, but, Bobby they may end up paying him a lot of money to stay in Houston, or he may end up going somewhere else where the quarterback position is a little bit more defined. Not to say I don't like Will Levis, but there's still a question mark. There's still that question mark. Like, he needs to, where he can go to other places where that question mark is not there when you talk about your quarterback position. But I think Callahan would be the guy. He's a guy that is experienced, a really good play caller. He understands, how to stay ahead of games, game plan. Obviously, it helps a lot when you have, a quarterback. Why am I forgetting it? The quarterback now with Cincinnati.
Joe
Joe
Burrow?
Burrow. Why did I forget Joe Burrow? I
D-Mase.
got so many things. I'm thinking
There's
about other.
so many names
Yeah,
swirling around D-Mace's head
exactly.
this
There are like a
morning.
billion names swirling around in my head. But when you have a quarterback like that, your job's a little bit easier. Not to say that it's easy, but it's a little bit easier to go out there and say, hey, listen, this is the game plan, orchestrate it. I got total faith in you. I'm not scared to call anything with you at quarterback. You bring him here, will it be the same thing? Can he call the plays the way he was calling them in Cincinnati?
Because he doesn't
Would he,
call plays in
yeah.
Cincinnati.
So would he be? My thing is, would he be able to take whatever he had at Cincinnati, whatever he learned in Cincinnati? Can he then come here and implement that?
Yeah.
And be able to call plays based upon, his knowledge of the game and based upon what he saw in Cincinnati and how they put game plans together, how they tried to stay ahead of the change, how you go out and you're playing chess with a great defense coordinator on the other side. The only problem is you don't have, the quarterback that Cincinnati do. You don't have the receivers that Cincinnati do. So what do you do then? But I mean, if I couldn't get Bobby Slowick, I think Callahan would be the next guy.
I think our lists are the exact same. That if I would rank the three candidates that are coming back for their second interviews and their in-person interviews with the Titans, Callahan would be my number one option. Because I know he didn't call plays in Cincinnati, but he is one of all of the candidates. Bobby Slowick, Ben Johnson, Brian Johnson, Thomas Brown, all of them. He has the most experience. He's the longest tenured OC in the NFL. He's been there for 5 years. Isn't that crazy?
Shame, ain't it? 5 years.
I think that's just an indication of the life cycle of an OC in the NFL.
It's really like 2 or 3 years.
It really is, because you either get fired or you get promoted as a head coach somewhere else. So OCs don't stick around for very long. So he's been in Cincinnati for 5 years. He helped develop Jake Browning into a quarterback that I thought, hey, that looks pretty solid. Developed really well. And also, he helped oversee the process of taking the Bengals that had essentially nothing, one of the worst teams in the league, bringing in Joe Burrow with really essentially nothing behind him or around him, and he's helped oversee that transition, a young quarterback to bringing pieces around him. Isn't that exactly where the Tennessee Titans are? They have a young and promising quarterback. And look, I'm not comparing Will Levis to Joe Burrow. He's not Joe Burrow. It'd be great if he was. But now you have a young quarterback that you feel like you can build around. You just have to put those pieces around him. I think Cincinnati did a great job putting pieces around Joe Burrow that I thought in, the 2021 draft?
Yeah, when they
got
Chase.
Chase instead of Penei Sewell. I think everyone in the league was laughing at the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, how are you going to get the ball to Jamar Chase if Joe Burrow's on his butt because this offensive line is so bad? I went to the Super Bowl that year. So I like Brian Callahan's experience. I like that he has a proven track record with developing young quarterbacks, which I think is an incredibly important aspect of the Titans' next head coach. And I also like that he has seen what the Bengals did building around Joe Burrow, which is what the Titans are going to have to do with Will Levis. Thomas Brown would be my number 2 option. I want an offensive head coach. And Thomas Brown comes from that Sean McVay tree of one of the, you think about some of the best coaches in the National Football League. It's Kyle Shanahan. It's Sean McVay. They have that same kind of frame of mind. And, although I don't think that he has enough of a track record, he's an offensive guy. And he has enough connects, I think, to bring in the right head coaches. And Dan Quinn, you got to be kidding me with Dan Quinn. I mean, I saw the tweet this morning, and I forgot who tweeted out, who initially had the news that Dan Quinn was coming back for a second interview. And my initial reaction was I audibly said out loud, drinking my coffee, eating my oatmeal, see this on Twitter. I say, why? Why Dan Quinn? What about Dan Quinn?
Dan Campbell, that's why.
What do you mean?
Dan Campbell, that's why. Look at Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is a leader of men.
You just fired a leader of men.
But I'm saying now you get a leader of men that is also an excellent defensive coordinator in Dan Quinn.
Why was his defense so bad against the Packers?
I don't need a
defensive coordinator who's a leader of men whose defense is traditionally underachieved. You just fired that.
I understand that, but Vrabel has never been in the seat of Dan Quinn when it comes to guiding a team or guiding a defense on one side of the ball that was statistically one of the best in the league. I'm not going to take a a one game snapshot and say I don't want Dan Quinn. Now he wouldn't be at the top of my list, but I wouldn't take that one game because it would be the same way when I saw Houston lose. I said, "Oh man, oh my goodness, here we go. People are going to now take Bobby Slowick off their list because of what happened against the best defense in the National Football League when it comes to sacking the quarterback, taking away, getting interceptions and stopping you from scoring." You went against that defense and you didn't look good, but it doesn't take away the brilliance that you show with that young quarterback this season. So
Totally.
I would love to have Bobby Slowick still, but obviously he's not on the short list of guys that we think potentially realistically can be the head coach for the Titans.
And yet, at least, because
Exactly.
it's coming out of the Titans bringing some coaching candidates back for their second interviews. Thomas Brown, OC in Carolina, is coming back for his second interview in person. He will interview with the Titans today, along with Brian Callahan, Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator, and Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator with the Cowboys, for some freaking reason. But I do want to get into that coming up next. And you bring up a fair point, D-Mase, of how much can we take away? How much credit can we give and how much blame can we give to coaches and coordinators based off of one game in the playoffs? We'll get into that coming up next. And, of course, into your thoughts as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 1025-1063, the game.
Happy Monday, everyone out there. I know that you made a lot of bets this weekend, and I hope you won. I really do. So if you bet on the Baltimore Ravens, you won. If you bet on the San Francisco 49ers, absolutely you won. In Detroit and Kansas City, absolutely. And while you were betting, I know you did it with our partners, Zen Sports, okay? And I'm tell you about their introductory promotion, which they are launching. It's available to all new customers in Tennessee. It's the No Danger First Wager, okay? When you sign up for a Zen Sports account, you will receive up to $1,000. No danger first wager. When you place your first bet on Zen Sports, you will be reimbursed for the amount of your bet if it loses up to $1,000. Plus, Zen Sports has launched a new VIP program for the premier bettors of Tennessee. If you think you might qualify, then listen up, people. The VIP program is by invite only. So if you feel that your Zen Sports play qualifies for a VIP consideration, please check out the program details and apply at zensports.com/VIP. No other sports book will offer you a premier sports betting experience with 24/7 top-tier customer support and bigger and better action than Zen Sports. So what are you waiting for, bettors? Get going and download their app at zensports.com today. Zen Sports betting just got better. Remember, gambling problems, call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 years or older to bet here in Tennessee.
He coordinates everything having to do with it. He establishes the whole structure of our offense. On game day, he and I are in constant communication. That is calling plays. That is establishing an offense. He has helped develop every position we have. He's invaluable. There's really not enough things I can say about him that if someone just followed us for a week and saw it, it would be, oh, no wonder everyone's so high on Brian.
That was Cincinnati Bengals head coach Zach Taylor on Cincinnati Bengals offensive coordinator Brian Callahan. Brian Callahan is one of 3 candidates coming to Tennessee for their second interviews and first in-person interviews. So it is Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, along with Thomas Brown, offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, and Dan Quinn, DC, for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, D-Mase and I were discussing, I'm anti-Dan Quinn. For a couple of reasons. One, I want an offensive head coach.
I get it.
That's the trend of the league. You have a young quarterback. You need to build around the young quarterback. And I think it'll be interesting to see with both, the Lions and the Texans to see once they lose Bobby Slowick and Ben Johnson respectively, then what happens. With 2 head coaches that aren't necessarily offensive head coaches, what does the offense take a step back? Does the quarterback development potentially take a step back? So I think that'll be interesting to look at. And that's another reason why I don't want a defensive head coach, is I want consistency. I don't want to have to keep replacing an offensive coordinator every 2 to 3 years. We just said Brian Callahan is the longest tenured OC in the NFL, and he's been with the Bengals for 5 years. That is crazy. And one thing, D-Mase, that you said is you can't judge a coach based off of one game.
Yes.
And, of course, that one game that we're referencing is the wild card round, Packers-Cowboys, where the Cowboys' defense looked absolutely positively atrocious. I say, hey, if you're going to look that bad, if you're going to be a defensive coordinator, defense looks that bad in the playoffs and ultimately costs your team a game in the wild card round at home, then I'm not really interested to bring you in as a head coach. But I do want to get into your point. If you can't judge a coach based off of one game, why not?
Because it's just like anything. I think players, but we all
We judge quarterbacks based off
we
of one
all are guilty of doing it. Looking at and it's so on a roller coaster. Sometimes it's a shame because 1 week we can be sitting here, not necessarily us, but I'm just saying like the just basically like news people or sports people, and when we're talking and you talk so much that you say one thing 1 week and then another thing another week.
Yeah, it's a fickle game.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, what have you done for me lately? So 1 week we could be screaming that one guy is the greatest player ever to don a helmet or any other athletic wear. And then the next week when they don't play well, it's like, oh my goodness, what is this dude doing? It's like, like he didn't play great last year or last week or the week before that.
Right.
I think Bobby Slowick in this situation or Dan Quinn in this situation, look at the body of work. Look at their body of work. And then you judge them by their body of work, not one isolated moment. Everybody knew Dallas was going to Dallas eventually, and that's what Dallas did. For some reason, their defense didn't show up to play. I can tell you what it was. Dallas don't have any beef in the middle. They just don't. They are a fast, finesse defensive team, and when they're up, that's when that defense feasts. But when it's a highly contested battle or they're down, then that defense has trouble stopping people. Why? Because they don't have enough beef in the middle. That's why I thought when Tier Tart got cut, I thought Dallas was going to be the first person to go get him because they need a beef in the middle, and they didn't, and they paid for it in the playoffs. So, but it doesn't take away from me that Dan Quinn is still a good defensive-minded coach. Remember, he was a defensive coordinator for the Legion of Boom. And what happened with them? They won a Super Bowl and went back and should have won a second one. Had Pete Carroll just ran the ball with Marshawn Lynch, he was the coordinator for those defenses. And we're talking about historic defenses, not just good defenses. Those defenses they rivaled the Baltimore Ravens, the Tennessee Titans, the Bears, all the great defenses we think of.
Yeah.
He was part of that. He was the architect. He was leading the group. Then he comes to Dallas, and he's still leading a top 10 group of defensive players. I'm not going to take that one isolated moment and say, well, nope, I don't want him as my coach anymore. Now, is he my first choice?
Nope.
No, he's not my first choice. But it still doesn't exclude him because of what happened. It doesn't exclude Bobby Slowick from being on my short list of guys that I would love for the Tennessee Titans to bring in as a head coach. Because again, who was he going against? With a
best
rookie
defense in the
quarterback,
league.
you're going against the best defense in the league. When you're talking about the 3 statistical categories, sacking the quarterback, getting turnovers, and points allowed, there was nobody better in the NFL this year.
That Baltimore defense is
They're
so
scary.
freaking good.
They're scary.
They're so good.
And they still had their moments. Houston still had opportunities, but they didn't capitalize on them. So that game, those games from those respective coaches, it's not going to take me out. It's not going to take them out of my short list of potential head coaches that I would love for the Tennessee Titans to have. I'm more so higher if it's Dan Quinn, Slowick, Callahan, and Brown, then Slowick now moves up. Slowick is probably 1 or 2. And then, but Bill Callahan, Callahan is still at the bottom for me. Quinn. Dan Quinn is still at the bottom for me.
I think that Slowick and Dan Quinn are different, and I see your point in coordinators that are now head coaching candidates that maybe didn't have the best showing or got beat in the playoffs. The difference to me is the Texans were on the road in Baltimore. They're a dome team and an outdoor stadium, and it looked absolutely freezing in Baltimore. You have a rookie quarterback going up against the best defense in the league, again, on the road. Dan Quinn, on the other hand, you're at home in a dome against a Green Bay Packer team that barely snuck into the playoffs.
They almost beat San Francisco.
And they almost beat San Francisco, and we will get into that. Absolutely. But I think it's different. I don't think that anyone was really picking the Texans to beat the Ravens anyway. That I step away from that game and I think, man, bravo, D'Amico Ryans. Bravo, Bobby Slowick. C.J. Stroud looked outstanding, and I don't think that a loss at Baltimore takes anything away from the magic of this Houston Texans season. For the Cowboys, on the other hand, we're calling for Mike McCarthy to get fired after that performance because it was Cowboys cowboying yet again. 12-5 for the third season in a row. You win your division, you have a playoff game at home, and you lose and you get embarrassed by the Green Bay Packers. So I think it's a little bit different there. I do wonder sometimes, though, as a football society, a sports society, do we place too much on a single playoff performance? I just saw it today. I got my memories from the 2021 divisional round of the playoff game when Ryan Tannehill threw 3 interceptions.
Yeah, that'll never go away.
That game alone completely stained Ryan Tannehill's reputation because he threw away a playoff game. That, Dan Quinn in the playoffs totally pooped his pants in the playoffs. And, is it fair to evaluate somebody just based off of one playoff game or a body of work in the playoffs? Like, what's the kind of the label that's been placed on Lamar Jackson?
Exactly.
Can't win in the playoffs. Can't get you to the promised land. Is that fair? And also on the other side, I would say, well, of course it's fair. The only thing that matters in this league is getting to the Super Bowl. The only thing that matters in this league is winning and losing, and especially in the playoffs. You can win in the regular season all you want, but if you fumble the bag in the playoffs, then you're going to have that label. So I think it is, even if it's just one game, I think it is important.
Yeah, and some people will, approach it in that manner, but I'm going to approach it, especially with Dan Quinn, because he's been around the league a long time. He understands it. He's been a head coach in this league. He's been great at his job as a defensive coordinator. This defense was 5th overall in the National Football League. They gave up less than 200 yards passing the game. Just over 100 yards rushing. And that goes back to me saying, listen, you need some more beef up front because what you're doing isn't working. And they only allowed 18.5 points a game. Now, I thought the playoff game, they just didn't show up. The whole team, offensively, defensively, coaching, owner, everybody that had anything to do with the Dallas Cowboys, they didn't show up. And people felt this was coming.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to allow that to take, Dan Quinn off of a short list of coaches that could potentially coach his team. Again, He's not my first choice. He's not my second, nor is he my third. And then if you add another guy in, he may fall down even further than that. But I look at him as the safe hire. But do you want to go safe? That's the thing. Do you want to make the safe hire? Because the safe hire could win you 10, 11 games, but the safe hire can also only win you 7 games, and you find yourself in the same situation again.
Why do you consider him a safe hire?
Because he's done it.
Yeah, he's been around the block.
He's been around the block.
Yeah.
He's done it. I mean, he's highly regarded in this quarterback, meaning in this coaching circle. If he doesn't get a head coaching job anywhere, he still will remain the Dallas defensive coordinator. Or if Dallas choose to move on, I guarantee you there'll be 5 or 6 teams lining up trying to get Dan Quinn as the defensive coordinator, because I think he's a great defensive mind. But I mean, he's just a safe pick. It's like, okay, I know what I'm gonna get out of that guy.
Yeah.
I know I know what to expect. Hopefully, he can bring in an offensive coordinator that can get the offense over the hump, because I know my defense is gonna be good with him at the helm. It's the offensive part that I'm kind of weird, leery about.
I can't go. I cannot go down another year with the Tennessee Titans with the offense as rough as it has been the last couple of years. All right, coming up next, so we do know that Thomas Brown, Panthers OC, Brian Callahan, Bengals OC, and Dan Quinn, Cowboys defensive coordinator, are coming back to Tennessee to interview for their second interview, their first in-person interviews. I've heard a lot this sentiment of, if you hire Brian Callahan as your head coach, could you potentially be interviewing Thomas Brown as an offensive coordinator? We'll give our thoughts on that coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
It's that time of the year, people, where, you reflect on the past and make plans for the future and make plans for the year ahead. You're running to, the next workout spot, and you're trying to get all your workouts in, and all of a sudden you hit this wall, okay? If you made a resolution to lose weight this year and you diet and exercise but still struggle to lose the pounds, it could be because your hormones are imbalanced. It has nothing to do with anything else but your hormones, okay? So call my friends at Cool Springs MD. They're experienced doctors specialized in identifying which of your hormones need to be balanced and provide a tailored solution designed just for you. Nobody else, not your friends, not your wife, anybody else, but for you. Imbalanced hormones can also cause more problems than weight loss, people. You may experience mood swings, fatigue, and decreased sex drive. Hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, can help. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and his team understands its frustrating cycle and want to help you be the best you this year you can be, okay? So there's no better time to achieve a healthy lifestyle. What are you waiting for, people? Give Cool Springs MD a call today for an appointment at 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458. Or visit their website at coolspringsmd.com. Don't let imbalanced hormones hinder your resolutions. Cool Springs MD, a call today. Take control of your health with HRT at Cool Springs MD.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We are broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. And today, our Game Nashville studio is Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena because the Predators are in action tonight, hosting the Florida Panthers puck drop at 7 o'clock. So we have 3 interviews taking place today. Second interviews, Brian Callahan of Cincinnati. We have Thomas Brown of Carolina and Dan Quinn coming back. Now, I have heard of this sentiment a lot ever since the news was put out that those 3 were coming back for a second interview. I've heard this sentiment a lot of hire Brian Callahan as head coach, bring in Thomas Brown as your offensive coordinator. What would your philosophy be of hiring an offensive coordinator versus having your new head coach bring in his guy as offensive coordinator?
Listen, if you're going to, what is it? You know, the owner hires the GM. The owner and her group hires the GM. And then what do you expect from the GM? To go out there and find me a head coach. Go and find me a head coach. Do whatever due diligence you need to do. Find the best candidate for this position. All right, I do that. Whoever you go and name, boom. I am not in a position, it shouldn't be up to me to then put in place a OC already for the head coach. Allow the head coach, if I am doing my job, then I am going to find the best guy for that position. And I'm going to trust that he finds the best offensive coordinator and the best defensive coordinator for that position, and so forth and so on. The GM shouldn't be in a position where he finds the head coach, but he already marries an offensive coordinator with the head coach. Maybe they may be good friends, but maybe they don't, they don't see the game exactly the same way. Allow the head coach to find his guy, whoever, and it might turn out to be the guy you want.
Yep.
But I don't think you could go in and say, well, head coach, here's your offensive coordinator. Well, why are you hiring me? Why isn't this supposed to be like my team? Like I get to, so I'm just here as a figurehead then. So if you hire the head coach, the OC, you might as well hire the DC as well and everybody else. Because I want to be able to hire my guys that I feel, even if I didn't coach with them, guys that I feel that's going to take my message and reverberate it to everybody within the organization from me on down. That's the guy I want. I don't need a guy that you picked in. I got to figure out. They tried that already.
That's what I'm saying.
They tried it already. See
how
what
we
happened?
Get in this mess?
They tried it twice, and it happened, and it went south twice. No pun intended, south, but it went south twice when they did that.
Yeah, that's exactly how we got in this mess in the first place. Is you fire the general manager when you are 7-5, number one team in the division. And then you bring in a new GM. It's a forced marriage. It obviously didn't work. So you fire your head coach because you just want to kind of start over and maybe get back to the normal flow of things. Not the normal flow of things, but maybe the more traditional flow of things. Are you going to put yourself in that same position? That it's a forced marriage between the head coach and the offensive coordinator?
Well, they did it with Mike Mularkey.
Yes.
So this would end up being like the second or third time.
And how long did that last?
Exactly.
Right.
You can't do
so
that.
Especially if you're planning on bringing in an offensive head coach, you need to let that head coach, that offensive-minded head coach, bring in his own offensive coordinator. No more forced marriages. I'm tired of that. I don't want that. And even if you wholeheartedly believe in Thomas Brown potentially as an offensive coordinator, if you are kind of turning the keys to the car over to this new, assuming Thomas Brown would maybe be in contention for the next offensive coordinator position, but let's say it is Brian Callahan from Cincinnati. If you bring him in as your head coach, it's because you believe in him. It's because you see him as the captain of the ship to get to the next point, that you believe in him to develop your young quarterback in Will Levis. You should also believe in him to bring in the right assistant coaches.
But let's just say that. Which I think,
which could be Thomas Brown.
Yeah, which could be it could be Thomas Brown, could be anybody. But typically you want to hire your guy, and I'm just playing the other side of it. Typically you want to hire your guy, and we all here in Titanland, we want an offensive-minded coach that also can be a leader of men. I think the only way you could make that happen is if your head coach is the OC, and he may have OC by title. Because we've seen in the league where you have OC by title, but we know who really calling the plays. Like McVay's really calling the plays.
Yeah.
Shanahan really calling the plays, but
Andy Reid.
Andy Reid really but they do have offensive coordinators. So I think under that logic, it could possibly work. Okay, I hire offensive-minded coach in Callahan. I'm hiring you, but I know Callahan is calling the plays or calling the shots. Are you okay with that? As a OC. You got the title, but you're not really the guy that's calling the plays. You got a lot of responsibilities during the week of help putting this game plan together. You're closely tied to me, but this is my offense and this is the way I want to run it, so I am calling plays. You by title are the offensive coordinator, but this is my team, this is my offense, so I'm calling it. Can you work under those circumstances? Maybe he can, because we've seen guys that can.
Yeah.
Maybe he can't. That's up to Thomas Browns. If indeed they don't hire him as head coach and they say, but we want him on our staff. Okay, if you want him on your staff, this is the only way this is going to survive. I'm the play caller, and you are just the OC by title.
Right. I would lean more toward you hire a head coach.
Exactly.
Let him take care of the coaching staff. That's part of his job.
Exactly.
615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to get in on the conversation on that. But coming up next, what did we see from the divisional round this past week, whether it's from quarterbacks or the way that teams are constructed? What did we see from this past weekend that kind of sheds a little bit of light of how the Titans could get to the next step? We'll get into that coming up next. Willy Donick will join the show as well. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app. We're out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators hosting the Florida Panthers tonight. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. All of your pregame coverage starts right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game starting at 6 p.m. Well, we had a pretty wild weekend in the NFL. We had Jason Kelce shirtless, chugging beers, taking the spotlight away from Taylor Swift.
Okay, so let's just start there. Let's start there.
Thank goodness he took the spotlight away from her. Man, take off your shirt every game so they could just look at you, man. Goodness, and take the spotlight
If
away.
that was choreographed by the cameraman or the producer, that was brilliant because every time I was telling Aaron, my wife, we're watching the game, Kelce catches a pass down the field. It's like, they're going to show her. They're going to show her. Let's see if they show her.
They
And
always
then,
have
boom.
a camera on. I think they always have a camera on the box, just in case something happens. Like,
Of course.
Camera
It's a
8,
cam.
you always stay there. We may come to you, we may not, but if something happens, we're going to click the camera 8.
Yep.
and
So
show
you knew it. You knew it was coming. So I looked smart there. And then, of course, when he scores the touchdown, they're showing it.
Exactly.
And then just when you think they're going to go back to her again, it's Kelce the next time, like doing a full spread, shirtless, beer. Like I felt like he crushed the beer can
He
too.
probably bit it. He probably took a bite out of the beer.
So you talk about like one end of the spectrum and then the other end of the spectrum. We had the whole spectrum covered there between
did they-
Taylor and him.
That's the
Okay,
full
did
Kelce
they
experience.
mention, because I wasn't paying attention, did they mention Jim Harbaugh or
Ooh.
Bill Belichick? I thought but that was
Good
one of
question.
mine.
That was
It like
that was
Bill
a take it to the
Belichick,
bank.
yeah.
So that's a very important question.
Yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
have to
I
go back and
don't,
do
Caroline.
the
I
homework
didn't
tonight.
hear anything. I don't know if you heard it.
think
I didn't hear
I
anything.
think I heard.
I don't think I heard
I
anything.
something. I think I did. Because you know why I heard it?
Convenient.
Because they won.
I wanna
and they
see
were
the
targeted.
tape.
They showed Jim Harbaugh in the stands, so they mentioned him. Yes, yes. They showed Jim Harbaugh in the box, cold as you know what, and they mentioned his name. Yes.
I didn't see it.
I saw it. I'm telling you, I saw it.
I'd like to see some receipts.
Yep.
You do not get credit unless you show
Come
your
on, Nick.
work.
Help me. I know you saw it, Nick. Come on.
D-Mase, you got to give me some sort of audio confirmation here. I'm kind of
Okay, I'm
lost
get it.
in the dark
I'm
here.
gonna find it. It's good. It's easy. I can just Google
Tape
it.
doesn't lie.
I can Google
Right
it.
now, D-Mase, you're sitting at a 2. If you give me evidence, I'll give you about a 6.
You'll get extra credit. But we had a fake punt in the Bills-Chiefs game. We had the Ravens absolutely dominating the Houston Texans in Baltimore in what looked like a very chilly game that I was excited to watch from the comfort of my own home. We had a great weekend. I thought it was a great divisional weekend, and I wanted overtime so badly, but unfortunately, wide right happens yet again for the Buffalo Bills. But I've kind of looked at these games, and I usually have a tendency to watch these games, one, through just a football perspective of enjoying fun games and great football, but also through the other perspective of, okay, now how does this relate to the Titans? Okay, now what does this team have that the Titans don't have? And I looked at some quarterback play over the weekend. It was Baker Mayfield, Josh Allen. Two quarterbacks that I think get compared to Will Levis, or Will Levis gets compared to a lot. And rightfully so. You know, the Josh Allen comparisons because he's got an absolute cannon of an arm, which we saw from that Stephon Diggs throw that should have been caught and completely would have changed the game. Stephon Diggs just couldn't come down with it. And I think the Baker Mayfield comparison also is fair as well.
Yeah.
Maybe the gunslinger mentality, the me against the world mentality, and also like their
The moxie and-
physical
yeah.
makeup too. Kind of short, stocky, beefy guys, shorter,
Yeah.
stockier, beefy guys. But I look at, what Baker Mayfield did. He committed the fatal mistake against the Lions with that late interception. And that really just kind of sealed the deal for the Buccaneers. That last interception, that ended it for them. Josh Allen, he wasn't perfect, but I don't think that he Josh Allen'd himself yesterday. We've seen maybe Josh Allen himself also commit the fatal turnover, make the mistakes. He wasn't perfect. But I kind of look at those comparisons, and I think they're fair comparisons of Will Levis, and say, what for the Titans is the difference to get out of Will Levis, maybe what we've seen the Bucs get out of Baker Mayfield? Maybe what is the difference with the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen that has made him turn into Josh Allen versus not being able to get past Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs? Or the difference that we've seen from Josh Allen now versus Josh Allen early in his career? What have those teams and coaches done for those quarterbacks that seem to be fair comparisons to Will Levis that the Titans have yet to do for Will Levis?
I'll tell you right now, it's 3 names. Well, really, let's just say 2. Young, fast studs at wide receiver. Mike Evans, Stephon Diggs. Josh Allen didn't become Josh Allen until Stephon Diggs got there. Then all of a sudden, he became this world-class or, elite sort of quarterback. Why? Because he has an elite receiver throwing him the ball. Stephon Diggs is a elite receiver. I know he had a huge drop yesterday, but I'm not going to allow that to capitalize his career thus far. The kid has just been flat out good to great in Stephon Diggs. And then listen, there's no better receiver, I think, and no receiver that is more consistent than Mike Evans. Just look at the numbers. Mm-hmm. I ain't got to sit here and talk about him all day. Look at the numbers. To me, that's the best receiver in the National Football League.
Really? Best receiver in the NFL?
Why? Because he's doing it for 10 years straight. Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. He's not flashy like a Jefferson or Jamar Chase. He doesn't make the wild catches. Mm-hmm. But you know one thing he does? Consistency all the way down. For 10 years, only one guy's been able to do that. And he's the GOAT, Jerry Rice. Well, Jerry Rice is he was consistent every year of his 20-year career. Well, maybe not the last year because he was with Seattle.
Well, he's about 100 years old.
Exactly, he was 100 years old by then. But look at Mike Evans' career. He's the model of consistency at that position, but he doesn't get the fanfare. Why? Because he's not flashy. He's not drawing people to him. He doesn't do it. He goes out like Marvin Harrison. Goes out, just do his job. That's all he does.
You know what is impressive, too, when you think about it, is he had Brady for 2 years, right? He had Mayfield this year. But he's had a hodgepodge of different quarterbacks. So even with mediocre quarterbacking, he still puts the numbers up. That's impressive.
Exactly,
right?
But people don't look at him like that because he's not drawing attention to himself. He just goes out and get the job done and go back on the bench and wait for his next opportunity. But that's the reason why a Baker Mayfield can now be the Baker Mayfield we thought he would be when he got drafted first overall and went to Cleveland. That's why Josh Allen turned into this elite quarterback. Why? Because you got him an elite playmaker. The Titans need to find that young elite playmaker. Mm-hmm. I thought for so long that it could potentially be Treylon Burks. I think Treylon can be a damn good number two. A damn good number two. But I don't know if he has it yet to be that top flight number one. They need a guy that they know. They need an A.J. Brown type of guy that they know. That's our top flight guy. And he's young. No slight to D-Hop. D-Hop doing his thing. D-Hop is a Hall of Famer. But they need a young guy that can produce like D-Hop and even better. That's what the young quarterback will let. You get him that guy along with D-Hop and a Treylon Burks, watch how improved he looked from last season.
I'm also curious, too. You mentioned Mayfield. Like, that is a guy – like, the Buccaneers had a good year, right? They played admirably yesterday. They battled, one more big play, and they could have really made that building sweat. Like, they went from we got it a couple of times in the game.
They started sweating when they threw that pass, when they threw that touchdown to Evans.
Yes, and then when they got the ball back and they threw an incomplete pass, you're like, okay, they got a chance here. So they played well when people thought they were going to be just a flat-out bad team. And Mayfield is a part of that. So he's a free agent. I'm guessing that they'll make a deal and Tampa will get him back. But that's a pretty good reclamation project. It's just another note in a evolution of quarterback. This guy was the first pick in the draft, and he's been a little bit of everywhere at different points in his career, different addresses, different statuses. Hey, he's on the verge of being really good. Oh, wait a minute, he's a total bust. What's going on? He turns the ball over. That's an interesting guy to chart. It just shows you just don't know what you're getting. Bringing it back to how it applies for the Titans, you just don't know what direction a quarterback's career can take you. So if you think you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So anybody who's sitting there, they got to look for another quarterback. Or Will Levis is the future quarterback. You've got all these things along the spectrum here of people thinking what he could be. We don't know.
There are a lot of people in this business that make a lot of money whose jobs are to find the elite quarterback, and they fail more than they succeed. I mean, if it was easy
Sure.
to find that quarterback of the future, everyone would have it. Just the Green Bay Packers are the only ones that have been able to figure out how to find elite quarterbacks year after year after year. And, Baker Mayfield, it's interesting because if you would have asked me going into this season, Baker Mayfield, he'll be a backup, like whatever. Baker, his best days are behind him. It took a year in Tampa Bay for my mind to be changed. I think probably a lot of minds to be changed. That Baker is a guy that can go out there and win you games. But I think the Baker Mayfield experience is he's also a guy that can go out there and lose you games.
Yeah.
Like Chris Collinsworth and Mike Tirico were having this conversation about Baker, and it was, well, they barely had to scrape by and win 9-0 against what I think it was the Panthers in the last game of the season.
But they kind of knew the Panthers
playoffs,
could not score. So, like, why chance it?
You only need to score 9 points. But on the other side, it was, wow, look at what Baker Mayfield did in the wild card round for them to be able to get here. That it's almost like whiplash. Like you see Baker make those fatal mistakes, make some dumb decisions, and then on the other side, you see the other side of the dumb decisions where he'll loft a ball up that could easily be picked off. But then on the other side, he can come down with it, and it's a 40-yard completion, and it's a complete change of the game. So I do wonder, what's the difference that has between Baker Mayfield, the good and the bad of Baker Mayfield? Is that going to be the Will Levis experience?
It
that
might be.
sometimes you're the highest of highs, and sometimes it's the, what are you doing, Will? Why would you let that ball go? And I think it's all the difference of coaching. That in Cleveland, Baker Mayfield had a ton of pieces around him. He had Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry as his 2 pass catchers, but they still couldn't get past that certain point. And it's because he had a revolving door at head coach, at offensive coordinator. He's able to find at least a little bit more stability, and he does take that next level.
It's a good question, and it does have you saying you got to put the pieces around a quarterback like that. He's got Evans, he's got Godwin, so that's going to make him look good. But here's another part of the Bucs. They paid the price this year. They paid the bill. They paid the credit card bill, the dead money in the salary cap for the Tom Brady and all the things that they did to try to load up for the 1 or 2 years, which worked. It got them a ring, right? But they paid the price for it this year. So now they're going to have a little bit more money to go about fixing or, plugging more holes and maybe building a roster to a better degree. So that's an interesting team to watch. And I always am wary because the Titans kind of sneaky in what they did in the trying to have 1 foot in the door, to use Hutton's term, like 1 foot in, 1 foot out on the, are we rebuilding or are we going for it? Where they were kind of right in the middle of it. But what they did in the process, they did foot the bill. They took all of Tannehill's salary. They didn't redo it. They took all of Henry's cap hit. They didn't redo it. So they swallowed all the Byard money until they traded him. So that will help them be able to, without having a lot of dead money in the years going forward. So hopefully they can work that to their advantage. You just have to spend it smart.
Yeah, you have to. And in this situation with Will Levis, it's sort of, I would liken him to more of a Baker Mayfield than anything, because with Baker, you see the highest of the highs, and you're like, wow, this kid can flat out play. I love Baker Mayfield.
So you would take him.
Yeah,
if Levis turned into him, would you be okay with it? That's a really interesting deal to make with yourself.
Exactly.
Is say, if he were Baker Mayfield, would you take it? Like, you could do a lot worse. You would want better. You would want better.
And how different is your response now than it was 6 months ago?
Right.
Like, if he turned into Baker Mayfield, no,
Baker Mayfield.
But then you look at Baker Mayfield, and the thing I like about Baker Mayfield, he has something you can't teach. He has dog in him. He has that ability to just want to win by.
And Levis has some of that, right?
You see
some of that.
Some of that, and you see some of that in him. But also, he can, throw interception-worthy passes. You're just pulling out your hair like, oh my goodness, why did you throw it? Like you said, Caroline. So, to me, the best way to help, this young quarterback, one, and I think this is why a lot of people may be leaning toward, hey, get an offensive-minded guy, because you want some continuity, some stability at the head coaching / offensive coordinator position. You don't want to come in here and after a year, all of a sudden now you're changing offensive coordinators because his offensive coordinator does so well, and he parlays that into another job. Yes, I know the offense stays in place, but Ask Philadelphia how much different their offense looked last year this season as opposed to last year.
You lose your offensive coordinator.
Absolutely. It looks much different. Even though the scheme is still there, it's about how you call plays. When you call plays, are you ahead of plays? So if you want to help this young quarterback, the best thing to do possibly could be get more so of an offensive-minded head coach so that no matter what happens, the philosophy and what we want to do as a team from an offensive standpoint doesn't change because our head coach is here. He's not going anywhere unless he does horrible. If he does good, he's just going to keep on getting contract after contract after contract. And then we will have some stability with our young quarterback. If you don't go that route, you take the chance of somebody coming in here, possibly doing well. Will Levis looking pretty good. He's progressing. All of a sudden, that guy takes another job somewhere. Now we got to start back over, not necessarily with the offensive philosophy, but how I coach and how I call plays during the game. He got used to this guy, whoever that guy would be. He got used to this guy. Then you see that guy takes a coaching job somewhere else, head coaching job somewhere else. Now I got to get used to the next guy that is calling plays, unless they hire within. Even within, the guy still calls plays a little bit different than what the other guy called them. So that's where you got to try to balance this thing out. Like, maybe we need to get a head coach that's more of an offensive mind. So if anything does change, at least we have that one constant. That's why Mahomes, I believe, he's a great talent, but he has stability where? With the play calling.
Yes, that's a great point. So one more question about Mayfield that got me thinking. He's a free agent, and like you said, if you're the Bucs, I mean, can you do better? Probably not, unless you want Tannehill or somebody like that. But so the familiarity. So the question is, this shows you how hard it is to find quarterbacks. He'll probably get paid pretty well, right?
Yeah.
They got him for
he'll
a
get
song.
paid about $25-30 million.
Yeah. They got him for nothing almost. He was just sitting out there. He didn't have a lot of value, and they're like, who do we get? Well, I guess this is Mayfield. Let's just take him. Now he's gone from that to, okay, guy's pretty good. Like you said, what is that? Pretty good get you $25-30 million?
Nah, let me rephrase that, because $25-30 million was 2 years ago. He'd get 35.
He's not getting 40.
Watch.
It's going to be close.
Watch and see. Baker Mayfield's going to be pushing that $40 million per year. Yes, he will.
Way.
That's the going rate for quarterbacks.
It is.
Especially
it's
if you lead us to a playoff. That's the going rate for quarterbacks, $35 to $40 million.
I think the Bucs would be silly to move on from Baker Mayfield.
Right.
Yeah, they'd be silly to move on.
You're not in a position to draft a quarterback.
No.
Is there a quarterback on the market that you think is just
Kirk
that
Cousins.
much better?
And that's why he's going to get that much, right? His agent knows that. So it's like,
Exactly.
you want him? You want him? Okay. $35-40 million.
Bill Belichick and Kirk Cousins.
Ooh.
I like that.
Now you're talking.
I like that.
The Falcons fans, that probably sounds pretty good
Yeah.
based on the quarterbacking they've been getting.
You got a point there. Yeah. So.
Kirk Cousins sounded pretty good in Atlanta right now.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
I mean, Will Levis, he's going to need, if we're trying to figure out how does the Tennessee Titans go from being the worst team in the division to a Houston Texans or even a Jacksonville Jaguars of last season. Now, they totally fumbled it this season. But you want to be able to say, okay, I got my young quarterback in place. Let's surround him with playmakers and put a coach in place that can, help nurture him so he can become the best quarterback he can be. And he doesn't even have to be elite. But if he stays in the system with us, if we have stability at that position, meaning the OC, head coach /head coach, and then we add pieces around him, I think it only elevates him. Again, he may not be a Patrick Mahomes. He may not be a Lamar Jackson. He may not be a Joe Burrow. But you don't have to be those guys in order to win a Super Bowl. You just got to get in the playoffs and go on a roll.
I don't think Jalen Hurts is Patrick Mahomes.
Exactly.
I know they didn't win a Super Bowl, but they got to the Super Bowl.
Exactly. Why? Because the pieces around him.
And because he had the right coaches in place.
Exactly.
to
And he played
bring
good
it.
that year. Absolutely.
Yeah, he played well that year. Because I think he had the right coaches to kind of unlock that next level of Jalen
Exactly.
Hurts. You see Brian Johnson, he was the quarterback's coach last year when Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator. Of course, Shane Steichen goes to Indianapolis. Now Brian Johnson's the offensive coordinator. That could be that he just doesn't have somebody that lose Shane Steichen, who's I think is a good coach. And now you don't have Brian Johnson that's not totally dedicated to spending time and allocating time and resources to helping Jalen Hurts. So, I look at Will Levis. I think he has a lot of similar tendencies of Baker Mayfield. I look at the interception at the end of the game where it's all right, F it, it's on me. It's on my back. No, I have to make the big throw, that I have to make the toss it up 50-50, F it, someone's out there somewhere. We've seen Will Levis make those kind of throws at the ends of games, that it's everything's on me. The pressure is on me to try and win this game. How do you find a head coach that's able to kind of harness that mentality that I think overall is a positive thing, that I can put the team on my back? I believe in myself and my ability versus making dumb decisions and making the fatal throw. All right, we'll continue this conversation coming up next. Plus, the conversation about Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. I know we've seen them face off in the playoffs in big games several times, and it feels like there's this Mahomes-Allen rivalry that's being pushed, but can we even really call it a rivalry anymore? We'll get into that coming up next and right into your phones as well. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. We're brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash today. What up, Max?
That was good.
Yeah, man, it's a heck of a year, man. I mean, I've been on the other side of that. It's tough. You put in so much effort and work every single game to play in these playoff games, and he played his tail off. I mean, and they gave them a chance to win the game. We were just able to come out with the win in the end. But that's two great football teams, two great offenses, defenses, everything going at it, and we were able to come out on top this week.
I think that was Patrick Mahomes after the game last night after the Chiefs took down the Buffalo Bills. Tune into 93.3 Classic Hits this Wednesday night for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders are at home facing Jacksonville State with pregame beginning at 6 p.m. and tip-off at 6:30. Coverage is also available on the 93.3 Classic app and at 93.3classichits.com. Live out here at Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena, Predators in action tonight. Max Hers is here as well.
Max Hers territory here. They're going to name this bar
He's
after
a hot
him at
man.
some point.
This is the Max Hers
Max Hers Barrel
at
House.
Bridgestone Arena. Yeah.
Or it'll be Barrel House featuring Max Hers.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. How do you feel about that, Max? Thumbs up? Love it.
Not ready to rename the whole thing, but they've got to get him in there.
Yeah,
you
you
know?
at least get some sort of, real estate on the sign.
Is there not some sort of food on the menu named after Max at this point?
Could be like
The
Max
Herzer
burger.
burger.
Yeah.
The Herzer burger.
That was like the concession.
It's a hot burger, like with like spices and everything going in, jalapenos.
So the concessions at the Bills Stadium last night was like the Karma quesadilla named after Taylor Swift. Or the Bad Blood waffle fries just be the Max Hers corn dogs. But again, that was Patrick Mahomes after the Chiefs win last night. And I do think that the NFL really wants to push this Allen Mahomes rivalry. Josh Allen is now 0-3 against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. Are we ready to say that this is not really much of a rivalry?
You know, I have it strikes a chord with me because I've seen that, right? It's only a rivalry if it's balanced, right? Both teams have to win, and I get that.
Spoken like a Vandy fan.
Well, okay, I wasn't going to go there. I was going to use another example that has a better ending to it. But yeah, I mean, I do think that was applied to that rivalry a lot, especially if you're sort of the one that's on the front side. Like Vanderbilt, they're not rivals. Whereas for Vanderbilt, it's like hell yeah, there are rivals, absolutely.
Right.
You know, and so the Predators. You know, they early on it was the Red Wings, right? That's our biggest rival, is what every Predator fan would say in the early years. The Red Wings were like, "Are you kidding?" Like, no, they were the top dog against an expansion team. Then it became the Blackhawks, and there were two great playoff series that the Blackhawks beat the Predators and went on to win the Stanley Cup. But they were both series that absolutely could have gone either way in the first round. But the Blackhawks would not say the Predators were a big rival, right? But the Predator fan absolutely would say that's our biggest rival. And then the Predators beat them in 2017, as we all remember, in the 4-game sweep. And you're like, oh, are we your rival now?
Yeah.
Oh, can I hear? Oh, it sounds awfully quiet over there. You know. So I get that.
Yeah.
So for the Bills fans, it's a different perspective than it is for the Chiefs. Great games though. Like the playoff
Great
games have been fantastic. I mean that was close to being a classic. Like the last time, the 13-second game, that was one of the all-time great games, for sure. So, I don't know. I've enjoyed watching the playoff games. I don't have a dog in the hunt for either team.
Yeah.
But, man, they play tight games that are fun to watch.
Oh, it was a blast. And whenever that field goal went wide right last night, I, along with most people in Buffalo, just because I wanted it to go to overtime. I didn't want that game to end. It was such a good game. So that's why, and kind of from that perspective, I say, yeah, that's a rivalry because they face each other all the time late in the season. That it's like you either have to get past Buffalo or get past Kansas City in order to get to the AFC Championship game or get to the Super Bowl. There's always really high stakes when those two teams play. It's always incredibly competitive. Has there been a game in the postseason that was decided by more than a touchdown or two?
I don't think it has, man.
Maybe was. I don't think it has been. So it's always been really close and tightly contested games. It's just the Bills cannot seem to find a way to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. That even when Mecole Hardman fumbles at the goal line, and I thought Josh Allen had a decent day.
Yeah, I thought he played well.
Yeah, I mean, with his legs and
he
with his
avoided the
arm,
big mistake.
Avoided the big mistake. I would say that the role players around him had more mistakes than anyone, whether it was the fake punt or Stephon Diggs not holding on to that, 80-yard pass from Josh Allen. It's just that whatever it is, whether it's Josh Allening all over himself, or whether it's the Bills just not being able to, really get past them, whether it's a missed field goal or a drop pass from Stephon Diggs, they just cannot quite seem to get past the Chiefs. We now have the 3 post-game sample size of the Bills not being able to beat the Chiefs, and at this point I'm thinking this Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes rivalry just doesn't seem as juicy as it used to be.
You know what it reminds me of, D-Mase? A little bit of the Utah Jazz of the 90s, where, they're always there, but they just couldn't quite beat the top team. But some of that is just the greatness of the Chiefs. Like that, to play in the AFC title game as many years in a row as they have, that is incredible. Like that, in a salary cap era, I think this is truly a great, great era for the Chiefs. So you have to put that in perspective. Like when you say, well, Stockton and Malone, they never won it. They never won the title. It doesn't really put it in perspective. Well, they had to beat Jordan to do it. And Jordan was the greatest of all time, and Pippen one of the greatest of all time. That's a little tougher to win it when you're playing against those guys, right?
Yeah, but it's unfortunate. It's
just the way it's what you're going up against.
He's no more immune to it than any other quarterback. Listen, what was the talk for the longest? As great as Peyton Manning was and is, or is and was, he couldn't beat who?
Brady.
He couldn't beat Tom Brady, no matter what was going on. He finally beat Tom Brady, and it was like that monkey off of his back. Like, whoo, we finally beat him. Subsequently, I think they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. Or did they lose to the Saints? Who did the Saints beat in their Super Bowl win? Was it?
Peyton Manning and the Colts.
Yes, the Colts.
Yeah.
So it might have been the year he beat Brady, but ended up losing to Drew Brees. But he ultimately ends up, winning the Super Bowl, having to go through the AFC. So many years, Peyton can't beat Tom Brady. Peyton can't beat Tom Brady. Well, he ends up winning the Super Bowl. So now that sort of that label was taken off of him. What was it for Steve Young? He can't win the big game. Finally, he wins the big game, go to the Super Bowl. Okay, fine. We take the label off of you. Josh Allen is no different. We can sit here and, talk about his greatness and lament that and everything else. But the one thing he hasn't been able to do in the postseason, not the regular season, he's beaten the Kansas City Chiefs with Mahomes in the regular seasons a few times.
This past season.
Exactly.
With the Kadarius Toney offsides call.
Exactly. But when it comes down to it, when plays need to be made, those moments in games, he's not giving them to you. Regardless of how great you may think he is, he's not immune to that. He keeps getting beat by the same quarterback. When you keep getting beat by the same quarterback, then that label gets put on you. You can't win the big game, be it true or not. Because eventually, here's the problem. He is the Phillip Rivers to the Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. He's the Phillip Rivers. Or
I
he's
agree.
the Dan Marino to those other
Joe Montana.
Joe Montana and somebody else.
John Elway.
I can win during the regular season. But when we get in the playoffs, for whatever reason, I could play a good game. Wide left, wide right. I could play a good game. Instead of being a hero, I take the shallow cross or the end route and pick up the first down and live to see another down.
That's it. That was the play. That was the play that they should have taken.
And I know you had
question.
drop balls
Hindsight.
here and there. Exactly. But it's like in those moments, those guys come through or their team comes through. I've always said sometimes quarterback gets too much praise and he gets too much blame. Their guys come through. Your guys in your situation don't.
But I agree with that. That is absolutely true. But I can slice it a little thinner. Let's take the 13-second game. He's the hero.
Yeah.
They score the touchdown. There's 13 seconds left. That's the huge moment. They won in Arrowhead. They're going on into the championship game. It could be Super Bowl time. They don't squib the kick.
Yeah.
Squib the kick. And then Josh Allen's whole narrative changes. No control Josh Allen has over that.
Well,
right?
remember
And who knows what he would have done in the next week? He might have had the run.
Well, and
So,
a wide right field goal kind of
a wide right
changes
field goal, and
the
that
perception.
is Jim Nance's fault, I'm sure. Me being an announcer, I'm sensitive to these things. But what did he say right before the
He
kick?
said something
The
about
Buffalo
the-
fans, I'm sure, were ready to go. No,
Don't
because
say
it was,
nothing.
Exactly. I talked to the coach. He said if there's a big kick, he's going to come through for us. Boom, wide right.
That thing's
I mean,
gonna-
it was 5 seconds later. I was like, man, that is what I never want to do as the announcer. It's like so-and-so at the free throw line, Derek Mason, he's hit 18 in a row at the free throw line. Doink.
It's like you never call out a no-hitter.
Exactly.
When you're calling a
Exactly. You don't
baseball
do
game.
it.
You don't jinx
But-
it.
Even though you obviously in the real
Zero
world, you have
control.
no control over it.
Exactly,
You
you
should
have no-
say
yeah.
something. It's a good note, but the fans are coming after you.
But
if you
that
say something
same
like
that same moniker was going to be attached to who else? Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
Because he couldn't beat who? Tom Brady. And then no one brought up the defensive guy being offsides. And
Right.
they basically win the game if he's
Yeah.
not offside because Tom Brady
They
throws
had
the
that
interception.
game won.
Yeah.
That game is won. Is your game.
Yeah.
But offsides, now all of a sudden, it wasn't because of what Mahomes did. It was because of what his team did. And now the moniker is, you can't beat Tom Brady. So we can't put you at that level yet. It wasn't until he beat Tom Brady where it was like, okay, now we can kind of remove that from you. And until Josh Allen beats Patrick Mahomes or get to a Super Bowl. But here's the part about it, the crazy part about it. It's getting tougher for him every year.
Yeah, it is.
Because the quarterback play now compared to back then is so much better.
Just getting to the point where you're playing Patrick
Exactly.
Mahomes in the playoffs is
Yeah.
hard to
You
get
might
to.
not get
that.
there.
I
Right.
thought they weren't going to get there this year.
Yeah.
They were 6-6, and they had a very tough schedule. They did a great job to get into the playoffs and win a game. I thought they were not. Most people thought they were not going to make it when they lost that game with 12 men on the field. Another thing that had nothing to do with Josh Allen.
Exactly.
They 12 men on the field. They win the game. Oh, you had 12 men on the field. Miss. Like, that's crazy. It looked like it was over. But they recovered from that. Now, though, you wonder, are they going to be able to keep putting a good roster around Josh Allen?
Like, is
right?
Stephon Diggs even going to be there next year?
Yeah.
That looks like that's a big mystery to me. What in the world happened to him? Like, his production dropped off a cliff for an elite receiver like him. So that's a question mark. And then the Von Millers and some of the guys they added to try to, put them over the top.
Yeah.
There's always a price to be paid as those guys age out.
And you bring up like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers. It does kind of feel like Josh Allen is that Phillip Rivers in this situation.
Yes.
And
For now.
the Brady Manning is Burrow Mahomes.
Yeah.
Because Joe Burrow's been able to beat Patrick Mahomes. He's been able to do something that Josh Allen hasn't been able to do in the playoffs. That, to me, feels like a juicier rivalry than anything.
But
you
then
know,
you add
like-
Lamar Jackson into it, C.J. Stroud
A
eventually.
moniker that also could be taken off of
Exactly.
Lamar Jackson this
Absolutely.
upcoming weekend. If he's able to beat
Yep.
Patrick Mahomes, that is a massive reputation shift for Lamar Jackson.
Exactly.
Because what's the label on him? He can't win you a Super Bowl. He can't win in the playoffs. He can't win against these elite quarterbacks that have the big arms. If Lamar Jackson's able to take down the Chiefs and Mahomes, which I think they look much more mortal this year than they have in the past couple of years, that's huge for Lamar Jackson and his legacy.
Think about John Elway. You remember this,
Yes.
D-Mase. He had that label, can't win the
Yes.
big one, for almost over a decade,
Yeah,
for
it
sure.
was.
Like, they made 3 Super Bowls, and and they would not have gotten to the Super Bowl without him. He was elevating the rest of their team. They didn't have a great bunch of guys. He didn't have Jerry Rice he was throwing to, or Derrick Henry running the ball. But late in his career, they had a great team. They got the great wide receivers, Rod Smith, Ed McCaffrey. They had a Hall of Famer, Terrell Davis, great running attack, and they won it. And so the last 2 years of his career,
They end up winning
he changes his whole legacy. So it's never too late for a guy like Josh Allen. You never know. But he had that reputation. Because remember, not only did they lose the 3 Super Bowls that Elway had gotten to previously, they got absolutely destroyed. Remember the Joe Montana? It was like
But they wasn't supposed to.
55
but
to
listen,
3 or 45.
Willie, you remember this? They won. Just think, if Cleveland.
Right. Oh, yeah, the Aaron Spiner fumble,
Exactly.
yeah.
He doesn't make it.
Right.
I
It's crazy how it can go.
Yes.
So that's the thing. Some of
Yeah.
it's out of your control. Some of it is in your control. And some of it is so razor's edge that you get labeled when it's not all deserved. Some of it is probably deserved, but what did you start this with the quarterback? He gets too much credit
Yep.
Too much of the
and
blame.
too much blame.
Even when it's completely out of your control. I mean, we were talking about how Josh Allen can't beat Patrick Mahomes. Well, if Stephon Diggs comes down with that pass, or if they make that field goal, now it's a completely different conversation about Josh Allen. And neither of those things have anything to do with Josh Allen. Too much credit, too much blame. All right, coming up next, I want to get into your phones on this. 615-737-1025 is the phone number. Plus, there was a viral video on social media over the weekend that had to do with a Titans player. We'll give our thoughts on that as well. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Tune into 94.9 The Fan this Saturday for Vanderbilt men's basketball. The Commodores will take on Tennessee at home. Tip-off is at 5 p.m. with pregame beginning at 4:30 p.m. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app.
Hey, if you set out to lose weight in 2024, chances are it may not be your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. People at Cool Springs MD, they understand the frustration of this cycle. That's why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program, led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge, addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood tests, supplements, counseling, and more. Dr. Lodge and his team don't believe in fad diets or generic plans, okay? Instead, they offer a personalized program designed to help you achieve your goals faster and easier. Now is the time to break free from the cycle of failed resolutions. Trust an experienced doctor in weight management to help you reach your goals. Dr. Jeffrey Lodge and Cool Springs MD are those such people, okay? Call now to make an appointment. Here's the number, 615-486-3458. That's 615-486-3458. Or visit their website at coolspringsmd.com. Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story. Write your book, people.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. TD, Turron Davenport, will join us at the top of the hour here in just a few minutes. We're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. And today, our studio is Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. I do want to get into the text line. You have some thoughts on Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, kind of how that applies to the Tennessee Titans. But first, before we get into phones, did you see the video that kind of went viral on Twitter over the weekend of Azeez Al-Shire? He was in the pregame linebacker huddle cheer in San Francisco. Did you happen to see that?
I did. I saw it.
Yeah.
Did he
What
learn
did
anything?
you make of it?
Did he learn anything from Mike Vrabel? What not to do?
So you don't like it?
I mean, it's not that I don't like it. I mean, it is what it is. It's not a being there, supporting your friends who you play with. Do it all day, every day.
Yeah.
But like now, like that, nah, because you play. That's just it doesn't the optics.
Yeah.
Not
and
to say
and he is a free agent, right? He's not necessarily under
thought he had another
contract.
year left.
Is he?
Just signed a 1-year deal.
Yeah.
So it's a 1-year deal.
So
Well, the
he's,
hell.
but it's kind of like, well, you did well. Like I would think the Titans, who have plenty of cap space, could bring him back if they like. Is that telling us that he doesn't think he's going to be back? I don't know. Like you just open yourself up for so
Exactly.
much when you do that.
I mean, if you're not under contract, hell, you do whatever you want to do. But I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to, try not to make a big deal about it. The optics for some people, it may not look good. But hell, that's his group of boys, and he was in that locker room.
And they probably invited him out to do it.
Invited him. He wasn't on. He just didn't get on. They invited him on the sideline. They said it was okay. So there's nothing wrong. But not if he was tied, like if he had another year or so left on your contract, then it's like I don't think he would have done it.
Yeah.
If he wasn't a potential free agent this season, I don't think he would have done it.
I'll give you perspective for me. I played. This is not about. Well, Willy talks about himself, okay? But I played 3 years of basketball, 4 years for baseball. My last year at Vanderbilt, I just played baseball. Just so happens, hopefully it wasn't a coincidence, or hopefully it was a coincidence. Of course, we had a guy named Billy McCaffrey that joined the team. Part of the reason why I just played baseball.
To be pretty
but
good.
our team won the SEC championship. Went 14-2. Unbelievable year. Billy McCaffrey, SEC Player of the Year. Went to the Sweet 16. Historical kind of run. I wasn't on the team. But that would have been my senior year. And when that team has been honored, I've always been invited back to be a part of things. For me, I always felt really weird doing that because I didn't go through the practices.
Exactly.
I didn't go through the battles with them, even though I really appreciate all those guys that I was with for 3 years in a lot of cases, or at least 2 years for some of the younger guys. I really appreciate that, but I was like, I'm not going to the official thing. I wasn't on the team, right? And so they even recognized me a couple times as a kind of a spiritual member because I was keeping stats for the radio crew. It helped me become a radio person, right? Because I got in and I met George. I kept stats for West Durham, and I was around it, and it really was a special thing. But it's not the same thing as being in there, right? So if they had invited me to come into the circle or on senior night, I would have said no, I'm not doing that. So for Al-Shire, I'm sure he was conflicted, right? If this guy's like, come on, and do the linebacker thing with us. Come on, just like old times. He got coaxed into it, I'll bet you. I don't think he was in there going, guys, can I get into the circle with you? Like,
I don't know.
No, he probably was like, what do I do? My guys are telling me to come out here. What do I?
I think it's just kind of an odd look.
Yeah,
it is an odd look.
It's a little uncomfortable.
That's how I would feel if I were him.
Yeah.
But he did it.
It's one thing if you are done, you're retired, you retired as a Niner, you're coming back for the playoff game. It's like, yeah, let me get in here because you are, your story is done. You're done, and you're not looking for another contract. You did play out your years there, but it's different, I think, where you're a year removed. You now are a free agent. I don't know what conversations his agent and the Tennessee Titans are having. Are they having conversations about signing him to another deal, about extending, whatever it might be? It just feels kind of uncomfy.
It does feel
Like
a
I-
little
like I
Like,
wanna-
can he?
uncomfortable.
Can
I
you
wanna
see him?
sit at the cool
Is he
kid
coming back
table
to the
again.
Titans now? Like, I
hope
wonder
that-
if he
I
comes
hope they
back.
bring him back.
Yeah, I think he's a good player. I think
he's a
he'd be
good
worth
player.
bringing back.
Exactly. I think he could be a cog in what you're doing from a defensive standpoint. Hell of a tackler. He may not be, as athletic as some of these top linebackers out there, but he's still a damn good player, and he can play within your system and do some good things. So, but it does look a little. It's just the optics of it.
And I think the coaching change probably helps him. Like if
Exactly.
I'm if Vrabel was coming back with all his defensive coaches, I might be like, what's he doing over there? He doesn't want to be back with us. But the whole coaching staff's going to be new anyway.
Yeah, like he has no ties. Like
Right, there's
like, he's not
nothing-
under
yeah.
contract right now. I don't think it's like a slap in the face to the Titans or anything. I just think it's kind of
Sure.
He
for
led the-
him.
It's just a little
for
strange.
his
Yeah.
negotiating power. Feels a little.
He led the team in total tackles with 163. The
Yeah.
closest next person was Jack Gibbons with 95.
Yeah, so he's the guy is a tackling machine. So I'd be like, listen, is he your top priority? No, but he should be like one of those guys you want to bring back. Like, okay, yeah, let's bring him back, sign him to a 2-3 year deal because he's a good player in our system. He knows exactly what to do. And he still has the ties with Rand Carthon and, they may bring in another, San Fran guy. You just never know. So
It's up to the next coach.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
speaking of the Titans coaching search, they're bringing in 3 coaching candidates for their second interviews. Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator in Cincinnati. They're bringing in Dan Quinn, defensive coordinator in Dallas, and Thomas Brown, offensive coordinator in Carolina. We'll get TD's thoughts on the coaching search coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app out here at Jack Daniel's Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Predators hosting the Florida Panthers tonight. We are also in the thick of a Titans coaching search, and joining us to break it all down is TD, Turron Davenport. TD, always appreciate our weekly chats with you. So we learned this morning that Thomas Brown, Dan Quinn, and Brian Callahan will all be coming in for their second interviews with the Titans, in-person interviews as well. What do we make of that, TD?
Yeah, the Dan Quinn one really is intriguing to me. I don't know, and I didn't know that he was like a legit candidate, whereas like, somebody that had a top chance, but evidently, making it to the second round, that says that. So that's intriguing. Thomas Brown, I tell you, you want a leader, he's definitely that. You could go back. I tell anyone who questions him as a candidate, just go watch the introductory press conference when he first got to the Carolina Panthers. And he said a lot of things that were very intriguing to me and that kind of got the wheels spinning like, hey, man, this guy could be a leader. And don't forget, he was voted the number 4 offensive coordinator, by the NFLPA, by the players. But Brian Callahan, he's the trailblazer, right? He was the first request, the first virtual, and now the first request to get the in-person one. And I think he remains the favorite.
It does feel like, TD is with us, it does feel like Brian Callahan is the leader in the clubhouse. Let's just say, hypothetically, if today, in the next 5 minutes, Brian Callahan is named the next head coach of the Tennessee Titans, how would you feel about it?
Hey, I would be looking forward to covering this team this upcoming season, which I'm looking forward to that regardless. But, I just think the offense that he would bring and what he presents is just it's right for the Titans, right for Will Levis, and it's just the ideal situation. Now, let me say this also. From talking to, some people in Brown's camp, I listen, don't be surprised, like, if he doesn't get the job, the OC situation wouldn't be bad for him. And let's not forget, he got those Sean McVay ties. We always overlook that, but this dude won a Super Bowl as the assistant head coach with the Rams.
We'll talk with Turron Davenport, better known as TD, ESPN Talking Tennessee Titans. Now, Turron, you brought up something that I was going to ask you, and we talked a little bit about it prior to having you on. If indeed Brown isn't the guy, say they go with Callahan or Dan Quinn, would it be a good idea to say, listen, this is who I want the offensive coordinator to be, Brown, or do you think they should avoid that and allow the head coach, whoever they deem that's going to be, to pick his OC? Because we know, listen, if Callahan gets the job, more than likely he's going to be the guy calling plays as well.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think you do allow the head coach to pick his OC, but I think, you could always suggest that, hey, this is a guy I think you should consider. But we're going to trust you to do it, but you should consider this guy. And I think that's something that you may see happen with Thomas Brown. And here's the thing, right? You do have somewhat of a marriage there because they trace back to the same roots, right? Gary Kubiak is who Callahan got into the league coaching for. Kubiak was a coach and player for Mike Shanahan. Well, Kyle Shanahan is Mike's son. Sean McVay worked with him. So it's all like in the mix, and we already talked about how Brown has worked with McVay. So you do have that. I tell you, Liam Cohen remains someone that you definitely have to consider. And I would imagine that Callahan will also consider Dan Pitcher, who will probably replace him in Cincinnati if he goes. And you also have Troy Walters, the former slot receiver. He's actually the receiver coach and pass game coordinator there with the Bengals.
Now, with that being said, do you expect, or should the Titans, because we got the Senior Bowl coming up here, I think next week, starting next week. So I'm sure if they don't find a coach by then, they'll still be doing some interviews. But do you believe they should have their coach in play by the Senior Bowl, or should they, like every other team, just take your time and find the best guy because you have the most important person in place, and that's the GM right now?
Yeah, I think it's something that you absolutely have to take your time with, and that's what they're doing, right, as far as, like, making sure they leave no stone unturned. So the Senior Bowl is something that it's good to have your coaches down there because that gives your coach, especially now in this case, it's probably, with the exception of Dan Quinn, is going to be a first-year coach, right? So you want him to get that opportunity to sit in front of some guys. And, at the Senior Bowl, that's free reign. You get to meet with all the guys, and it's not numbered or anything like that. You just go ahead and rock out with the meeting. So that is key. But like you said, Rand Carthon is in place. Chad Brinker's in place. Anthony Robinson is in place. So they do have someone that will be able to sit in on those meetings and bring the feedback back to whoever they choose to be the head coach.
Now, I don't think we've had you on since the firing of Mike Vrabel. I could be wrong with that. But what did you think of the firing and the timing?
Yeah, I was on one time, but, it was in the midst of everything. It was kind of crazy. But, the firing, look, it comes down to this, right? There's a direction that they want to move as far as being more modern offensively, more innovative with a lot of the things they have going on, all the way including sports science and some of the stuff that they're doing there. And apparently, that wasn't something that was going to be married to what Mike Vrabel wanted. And, it's unfortunate because it ended up costing them a really good coach. Mike Vrabel is going to be successful wherever he goes, and I definitely believe that. But at the end of the day, what they had in place wasn't fully accepted by Mike Vrabel and Miss Amy Adams-Strunk. I tell you, it's not a rash decision. It was something that, has kind of, from what I understand, have been brewing for some time. But it hit a point where it was like, hey, look, can't keep doing the same thing and expecting a different result. And that's where they were.
Turron Davenport is with us. Turron, I feel like that is probably a somewhat underreported part of the equation here. And you just hit on something I had not thought of this term. I think of analytics, which I think is part of it, but the sports science, the game is evolving. And this, if you read the statement, the very long statement that Amy Adams-Strunk put out there, it kind of mentions these things, and it kind of gets glossed over in the whole, I guess, the shock of the whole thing, moving on from a guy that's got incredible credibility around the league. But it does seem like there's a modernizing of what a lot of organizations are doing, and the Titans were a little bit old school there.
Yeah, and you saw a bit of in the sports science part of it. They did the GPS tracking to check the speeds that the guys are at and how much they're running and those type of things. And then they also, did a lot to monitor things like that. You do have the shakes. I know some of the guys started to get custom shakes. Man, I can't remember the young lady's name. And I always peek my head in there and say hi to her, and I got to talk to her a little bit the one time. I just cannot remember her name. But her office is right there. When you come out of the locker room, it's right there. And she has started to put together, some of the individual shakes and things like that. And I remember seeing that when I was in Philly. That was one thing that Doug Peterson kept from Chip Kelly. And, Chip Kelly was a huge advocate of sports science and all that crazy stuff or not crazy, but all of that, innovative stuff that started to creep into the NFL. So there's some traces, but, there's more that they could do. And I think when you look at Chad Brinker, he has a model for everything from the analytics standpoint. And that's something that I would imagine, the player injuries, they will look to find ways to try to reduce that because we know it's been outrageous over the last 3 years or so. So that's an area for improvement. And, hey, Thomas Brown, he had his first, football job was as a strength trainer with Georgia.
Interesting to think about how you would marry all that together. So how would you characterize, TD? It's hard for any of us to know, but you were around it a lot more than we were, but how Vrabel took to this stuff. I feel like he was coming on board with it, but definitely not on the cutting edge of it. Like you mentioned Chip Kelly. There are some coaches that have gone way out in front. Some have had more success than others. But how would you put Vrabel in with marrying the old school to, where the game is going?
Yeah, I think he did have some input, and some, not input, but some usage of analytics. I've asked him that multiple times about different things, and he did say that they considered it. But here's the thing with analytics, as far as football field is concerned. all they are is a new way to refer to what old school people call tendencies, right? I mean, you look at back high school football. You go and you see the film of the team. Hey, third down, they like to have the tailback go in motion like this, and then they throw them the ball. That's what they do most of the time. That's analytics, but just to a more crude level. And I think that's something that Mike Vrabel understands, and I know because we had one-on-one conversations about it from time to time. So yeah, I mean he definitely incorporated. Like, he's not some curmudgeon dinosaur football person. He mixed in some of it, but I think they want it more organizationally and just from top to bottom and just for the whole program, and that's a part of why they are going forward with a new direction.
And I think of different facets of it. I think he did very visibly. For example, yesterday, or when was it? Yesterday in the Lions game, the Bucs went for 2, and they could have cut it to 6, which actually would have covered the spread. At least that's not why they did it, but they did it exactly how the Titans did when they came back against Miami. It's kind of the new wave way of doing it. You go for 2, you try to cut it to 6, and then you just kick the extra point to win it when you score again, like Derrick Henry did in the great comeback against the Dolphins. But everybody's kind of like, why in the world would you go for 2 here? But Vrabel did come around to that. But I guess what I'm getting at too, Turron, is it's not just how you apply it on game day, but also how you evaluate players, how you decide what players are worth. That's another thing that I'm wondering. I know John Robinson proudly said, hey, we go by the eye test more than anything. We kind of do analytics, but he would kind of downplay that part of it. But there's kind of there's a whole, universe of how you could use this kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a whole universe, and that's an advancement that this organization will have under Rand Carthon and the crew with Chad Brinker and, Anthony Robinson and Brian Gardner and all those guys. That's something that they will have. And it's funny, when Rand got the job, he mentioned Elijah Mitchell and how the analytics was the part that took them to him and say, hey, this is actually the best outside zone runner in the draft, like one of the best ones. And we could get him in the 6th round, so let's do it. And you saw how that worked, right? Because that's a marriage of the analytics and the eye test, and I think it's all about, not dismissing. And that's something that I had to work on myself. Like, somebody would say something analytic-wise to me. I mean, man, get the heck out of here with those formulas and algorithms. I'm not trying to, but at the same time, you have to acknowledge it as a part of the process. And I think that's something that, Rand Carthon has done a good job of doing. And that Elijah Mitchell in San Francisco, as a rookie 6th-round pick, he had 900 rushing yards. You know what I mean? That's doing a lot.
Turron Davenport is with us. TD, getting back to some of the coaching candidates, I know that Thomas Brown is a name that you're high on. I just want to present to you one of my concerns about Thomas Brown, and then you talk me off a ledge. My thing let's look at the 3 candidates that are coming back for a second interview. I don't like the idea of Dan Quinn being the next Titans head coach because I want an offensive head coach. But look, Dan Quinn's been around the block. He's gotten to the Super Bowl. He has experience in the league. Looking at Brian Callahan, he's the longest tenured OC in the league right now, which is wild because it's only been 5 years, which I think is just kind of more indicative of the shelf life of an OC, that if you're a good one, you're getting a head coaching position. But we've seen what he was able to work with Jake Browning, that he has the skins on the wall of working with and developing young quarterbacks. Thomas Brown, at least to me, from what I've learned of his background, doesn't quite have that experience or the skins on the wall that maybe some other candidates might have.
Yeah, he may not have the experience working with the quarterback or the skins of the wall on the wall, as you mentioned, but he has served in the OC role before in college at Miami for 2 years, and also as obviously with the Panthers, he served under Sean McVay as the assistant head coach there. But here's the thing, right? You have to look at whoever gets this job. If they're wise, they're going to keep Charles London as the QB coach and the pass game coordinator because, you look at the quarterback school that he put Will Levis through. I don't think there's a person in that building outside of Levis more responsible for the development of him than Charles London. So you do have that. And obviously Pat O'Hara was working with them too, but Charles London, and Levis has said this, London was instrumental in that. So you have London there to help you out in that area. Also, Thomas Brown is very close to Jim Caldwell. And last time I checked, Jim Caldwell has an extensive record of working successful work with quarterbacks. So you have that as well. And then you look at if he wanted to, you could bring Josh McCown, a former NFL quarterback, a guy who was just interviewing for the Texans head coaching job 2 years ago. So you have that as well. So for me, when you look at things, right, as someone that's effective at your job, you have to look at it and say, hey, okay, these are areas I'm not strong at. Who can I bring in to strengthen that and make this something that turns into a positive? And I think that's what Thomas Brown would do.
Now, you just spoke of whoever the coach is going to be of the Tennessee Titans. It would be wise of them to retain Charles London as their quarterbacks coach because, to me, this season, I think he was worth, the money to bring him in because prior to that, they had a hard time, it seemed, at least to me, at developing those young quarterbacks. Take Ryan Tannehill out of the equation because he had been in the league 8 years when he got here prior to coming here. So whoever that guy is, you retain him. But we did have a segment where how does the Tennessee Titans be next year's Texans? How do they go from the worst in the league to competing for the AFC South or competing for a spot in the playoffs? What are some of the first things they need to do in order for that to come to fruition outside of the head coach?
Yeah, I think whoever the head coach is has to incorporate a scheme that showcases Will Levis, what he does well. And in addition to that, they have to find a way to get Treylon Burks to reach a fraction of the potential that he has. Because, you watch this guy, he's so talented. So you have that. You above all else, though, you have to get the O-line right. And that's why that number 7 pick is so important. I'm not saying you reach for an offensive lineman, but if Joe Alt is there, ran better run, right to that podium and put that pick in because he's the guy that you want. So there's an assortment of things that have to happen, and let's not front. The defensive side of the ball has to be worked on as well.
I think Floyd Reese would tell you he ran when Javon Curse was still available in 1999.
I'm sure he did.
Just tripping over.
I feel like I think there's a great story that he used to tell that he was calling around to see who was trying to pick who. He was trying to figure out was anybody going to pick Curse, and then because he was thinking about trading up, and then all of a sudden he figured out who was going to get picked right before, and it wasn't Curse, and he said I sprinted up to that thing.
Yeah. I don't blame him. I'd have done the same thing.
It worked out pretty well.
Worked out pretty well. TD is with us. TD, we heard Derrick Henry on the Bussin' with the Boys podcast last week and talked about his future with the Titans, his last few years with the Titans. He talked about how things just felt different in the locker room, and things felt different from the outside looking in for me. But he talked about his future with the Titans, and either Taylor Lewan or Will Compton asked, is the door closed to going back to Tennessee? He said, no, the door's not closed, but I feel like they're going in a different direction. What did you make of Derrick Henry's sit down on Bussin' with the Boys, and what do you think Derrick Henry's future will be? Will it be in Tennessee?
Yeah, how could Derrick not feel like they were going in a different direction? Yeah. You look, this year is the first time another running back even came within like 20% of the snaps that Derrick Henry got. And obviously that was a part of, Spears being on the field with him at the same time too. But, yeah, I think the writing's kind of been on the wall. But that's not to say that the door is closed on him coming back. But, it's time. The team, they're going to look to shift to a different philosophy on offense. And unfortunately, as good as he still is, because I think he's still among the best running backs, he's just not that guy anymore that this offense could be, can revolve around. And I don't think the Titans wanted to do that anyway.
TD, appreciate you as always. Thanks for stopping by. We'll chat with you next week.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, hey, Willy, Single game Mets tickets are on sale, man. I'm getting ready to get the April 14th. Doc's jersey is getting retired, and June 1st is Darryl Strawberry. The tickets are hot, man. So
I knew they were doing that. I thought it was the same day, but I'm glad they're making 2 days out of it. But that's great. I've been excited for that. I am definitely pulling out my Doc Gooden jersey that one of our great listeners, who was a collector, gave me years ago, and I still have it with pride. I will pull it out that day. Autographed Doc Gooden jersey there. And, TD, you'll be happy to know the voice of the Florida Panthers, Steve Goldstein, lifelong Met fan as well. So there's at least 3 of us in the city today.
There we go. Let's have it, man.
wait, sorry, TD. One more thing before you run. Will the Titans have a head coach by the time we talk to you on next Monday?
Oh, man, you throwing me right on the grill, man. The weather just broke. We don't need to be grilling yet. You know what? Hey,
Not
look,
this weather.
I'll say yes. Yeah, I think they do have one by then.
I think so too. All right, TD, appreciate you. I would say let's go Mets, but that would sound like vinegar coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, Cardinals fan. Cardinal fan, Mets fans. We do not mix.
Pond
we
scum.
do not mix.
Pond scum. All right, TD, appreciate you. We'll chat with you soon. All right, let's react to what TD had to say coming up next. Plus, I do want to get Willy's thoughts on the 3 head coaching candidates coming in for their second interview. Brought to you by Zen Sports. Start earning cash rewards on your bets today. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older and in Tennessee to bet.
All right, let's talk F&M Bank. Caroline did slide that in there as a question for Turron because one of her take it to the banks last week was that the Titans would have their next head coach by the time we have our segment Friday at 1:45. We always have a lot of fun with that. I had a great weekend, by the way, with that. I'm trying to catch up to these two. Meanwhile, F&M Bank has done great things. We have talked about the whole philosophy of banking made easy on purpose and how F&M Bank, with their 20 locations in this area, they get right in the middle of their communities, and they want to be a part of it. They want your decision-making to be important to them. They want to build that relationship with you to make it easier for you to do your finances. Whether you're up there in age and you're looking for that next level, or you're a young person just trying to get how to work your checking account, how to save a little money with things like the Smart Swipe. All of these things are things that F&M Bank thinks about and they cherish with your relationship. So find the nearest location. If you haven't had great success or you haven't thought about it much, form a relationship with F&M Bank. They're outstanding. Visit myfmbank.com and find the nearest location to you, whether it's Hopkinsville, White House, Lebanon, right on Main Street in Mount Juliet. Just find that location and you'll be happy you did. myfmbank.com is the website. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Caroline, Willy, D-Mase, we're broadcasting live from the Spring Hill Heating and Cooling Game Nashville studios, keeping your home feeling comfortable all year round. The Predators are hosting the Florida Panthers tonight. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. So we're out here at Jack Daniel's Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena. Do want to get into your phones. But first, Willy, I wanted to get your thoughts on the latest in the Titans news because you were out at morning skate. D-Mase and I were kind of discussing it earlier. Thomas Brown coming back for his first in-person interview, his second interview with the Titans. Same with Brian Callahan. Same with Dan Quinn, DC, with the Dallas Cowboys. What do you make of it?
You know, I'll give you my opinion, but it is not based on deep knowledge. Like there was a day and time where I wasn't that far removed from the college basketball game that I probably could have told you a deep profile of every head coach that was getting a job somewhere, right? I wasn't that far removed from playing. I had been announcing. I was around. So what I'm going to give you is not as much so I think that's where I would start it. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to have any preconceived notions on any of the three. And I told you my story last week of Ken Wisenhunt, right? Yeah. I had dealt with Ken Wisenhunt as a position coach at Vanderbilt. I got to know him just being around him on the field, but also playing a lot of pickup basketball. And then I watched him go through this whole process of climbing up the ladder, Super Bowl winning offensive coordinator, Super Bowl appearance came within a tiptoe of a Santonio Holmes catch of winning a Super Bowl with the Cardinals, and then going back and being a very successful offensive coordinator with the Chargers and Phillip Rivers after that. So when he got the job with the Titans, I was thinking, this is who you want. He's got all the experience. He's got a little experience in Nashville, and it was an absolute train wreck, right? So I said to myself at that point, I don't know anything. You know, I thought I knew. And it was the absolute worst outcome that it could have been for him and for the team. It set him back. And I kind of have that feeling about Dan Quinn. I look at Dan Quinn, I'm like, very similar track record as Wisenhunt, except on the defensive side of the ball rather than offense, right? Super Bowl winner, defensive coordinator. Took a team to the brink of a Super Bowl title. Not just got to a Super Bowl, but should have won, right?
Just got to a Super Bowl, but blew a Super Bowl.
Right, for the wrong, I mean, known for the wrong reasons, right? But he's 1-2 plays away from winning that thing. The only team to lose in a game that goes to overtime in a Super Bowl, for whatever that's worth, and then goes back after losing his job and resurrects a great Cowboys defense. Like the Cowboys had a lot of middling years. So we always kind of say they can't win they were kind of down. They didn't have any defense. All of a sudden they have one of the better defenses since he's been there. So I look at his track record and I say, okay, that's a very good resume. And these other guys are much more the up-and-coming name. You're looking for that next big thing. And I don't think I'm qualified to be able to tell you. I was interested in Turron's take on Thomas Brown, right? He knows a lot more about that than I do.
Yeah.
I would just only be, giving you an opinion from afar on that. So just as a fan watching Dan Quinn, I kind of like what he brings to the table. But, if Rand Carthon and Amy Adams-Strunk see something special in these guys coming up, then I'll just have to go with that. Like, I just don't know.
Well, I said Dan Quinn was, if we're ranking these three guys, Brian Callahan, Thomas Brown, and Dan Quinn, he would be third amongst those guys. Yeah. He would be a safe pick.
Yeah.
Because he's taken a team to a Super Bowl. He's won a Super Bowl. He's coached, top-ranked defenses. He was a part of that Seahawk defense, I believe, when they were so good. So that would be, for me, it would be a safe pick. But it's safe what you want in the day and age of football where offenses are evolving, where offenses are pushing, like we're pushing the line and we're pushing it further and further. Do you want a safe coach? Well, safe coach might get to 10 wins, but you get in the playoffs, you get beat. Matter of fact, 10 wins might not even get to the playoffs nowadays. Or he can win you only 7 games, and you're looking for another head coach, a few years after that. So, to me, he would be third on my list, but he would be a safe pick because I know, like this commodity, I know. Mm-hmm. Like, I've seen his body of work.
Yeah.
These other two guys are young, up-and-coming guys, great offensive minds, but, it's like, which one do you want? Do you want to move as the NFL is moving, or do you want to go with this guy that has been a staple in the NFL, that has coached some really good defenses, that has coached some really good teams, took a team to a Super Bowl? Do you want that guy?
It's a great question, and I don't. There's no right or wrong answer.
Right.
That's the thing. If you look through history, the unknown guy who's up and coming and very young, even if he doesn't have this sparkling, like as people will say, if it's Brown, Carolina's offensive coordinator, but that doesn't take into account what he was dealing with there, right? And you look at the track record from the Rams, and you're like, okay, that's a successful organization there. But what do we know about him? He'd be very young, but if he's that special guy, and you say, wow, they're identifying a guy on the way up, then that is something that's been successful in a lot of sports for a lot of organizations if you know how to identify that up-and-comer.
Well, think about Mike Vrabel. His defenses were horrendous in Houston.
Fair point.
And he got a head coaching job with the Titans, and this was something I told D-Mase earlier. I don't think that you need to have the most elite offense or defense that you coordinated in order to deserve a head coaching job. I think Matt LaFleur was the other example that we brought up earlier.
Yeah.
It's not like
Unknown.
the Titans' offense was humming. Was elite offense the year that he coordinated it. He got a head coaching opportunity in Green Bay. It looks that he's done a pretty good job.
Done a very good job.
He's been in Green Bay. So that's not what I necessarily need, but I think about what this team needs. Because sure, you could have coaches that come from all sorts of backgrounds, offensive, defensive, coordinators, not calling plays, whatever it might be. But what does this team need? I think that this team needs someone to help guide its young quarterback and to get the right pieces around the quarterback. Dan Quinn doesn't really fit that MO to me.
But
Thomas Brown, I don't know. He's just an unknown.
Right, and he is an offensive mind. But to your point, D-Mase, when you were talking to Turron about this, if you have Charles London and you have the guy that has already been sort of the guru, and maybe you could bring in a Liam Cohen, what would would you sort of cover that and say, well, that's who's taking care of my quarterback. That's who is. Those are the people I'm surrounding myself with. These are the different ways you would have to sort of go about it in the big picture. I don't think it's necessarily about the one guy. So I'll throw it to you guys. Do you think it's one of these three guys? If these are the three that are coming back for the second interview, do you think that this is who they're picking from?
Oh,
it
man.
feels like it to me.
It feels like it. I think I still like Bobby Slowick, but obviously they're still in the playoffs.
So you have to wait on him. Yeah.
They could bring him back for a second interview, but it may have to be after the NFC.
It would have to be at least Monday.
It'd have to be Monday, at least Monday after the NFC Championship game. So he's another guy, but if you're just picking from these three guys, again, Dan Quinn is last on my list. It's not that I don't think highly of him, but I look at this team. It's a young team, and they've had these type of coaches before, the Dan Quinn type of coaches.
Yeah. Well, Ken Wisenhunt would be is very similar
so
profile.
I think they need someone that, and I'm not saying that Dan Quinn isn't energetic, and obviously he can lead men. He led his team to a Super Bowl, but I think they need, they just need that young, fresh, offensive sort of guy that's geared more toward the offense, that if anything changes, that one constant will still be there, the head coach and his offensive sort of approach to the game.
Because as we see, Brian Callahan, 5 years, longest tenured OC in the league. The shelf life for a good OC is what, 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, 2-3 years. Yeah.
Also, the shelf life for a bad OC is about 2 to 3 years.
Either way, you only get it 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, you're not going to be there for too long. LD from McMinnville, Texas, and our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, as a fan, I want Callahan as head coach and Brown as offensive coordinator. I would love to see that McVay offense in Tennessee. With you, the McVay offense, Shanahan offense, just bring it a little bit more into the 21st century. But one thing that we touched on, D-Mase, was I want the head coach to bring in his offensive coordinator. If that's Thomas Brown, then great.
So be it, yeah.
Then so be it. But we're trying to force too many marriages. You saw that kind of rear its ugly head.
It didn't work the last 2 times they tried to do it.
No.
Okay? Some situations, arranged marriages are great. In the football world, maybe not.
Not so much.
No.
Jared in Spring Hill, Texan, says, do you feel like the Titans are smearing Vrabel some by conveying his inability to want to collaborate and jump aboard a modern football system?
No.
I think they've been smearing him in the slightest.
I think everything that's come out has been pro Vrabel and not pro the organization. And if I'm wrong, please show me, because everything that
I
has
would
come
100%
out,
agree with that.
Everything that's come out has been, Vrabel.
What were the
Vrabel,
Titans
great.
thinking is
Exactly.
what the national
Yeah.
perception is.
Yeah.
Is the Titans, do they know what they're doing? They just let Vrabel go. That in a nutshell is what the national consensus is. Agree?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm,
So
yeah.
the smearing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Nobody's smearing Vrabel.
I don't think the Titans smeared him.
I think
No.
the only example that you could have of that is potentially Joe Rexrode and Diana Rossini's article in The Athletic that showed, he wanted more control. He had concerns about Rand Carthon, so on and so forth. And, of course, that's not from the Mike Vrabel perspective. It's from another perspective, from, I'm guessing, I don't know their sources, somebody within the building. So it's not going to be pro-rah-rah Vrabel, but I still don't think it's smearing.
But honestly, I thought when I read that article, I thought that was a very pro-Vrabel take. It was about, I thought it was about 80-20. It did sort of represent 20% of the Titans and Amy Adams thinking, but it was a lot more of Vrabel wanted this. So they didn't give Vrabel that.
He was the guy. Maybe they make him into assistant GM.
And what were they? What were the Titans weren't on board with Vrabel? I mean, I thought there was a lot of Vrabel perspective in there. That's how I read into it.
Yeah. So.
And only time is going to tell.
Yeah.
Right?
You're right.
But I still go back to sort of a general 10,000-foot view that after 6 years, most coaches cycle on to the next thing. And these are good coaches. And that's what I wonder about the Dan Quinn theory, right, is Dan Quinn probably is ready to cycle in for another shot as a head coach. He's turned them down before. He wanted to stay with the Cowboys when he could have gone for another one. And I think he's a guy that had enough success to say, all right, I'm ready for my next crack at this thing. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Joe Torre is a name that always, for a Braves fan and a Yankees fan, would ring true, and probably a Cardinals fan, right? He'd never won anything big. He'd been an okay manager, with ups and downs, and not much, nowhere near the skins on the wall that Dan Quinn has.
Right.
Who has almost the Super Bowl ring. Like, he has an NFC title. He has a Super Bowl ring as a defensive coordinator. Joe Torre didn't have that kind of stuff. But the Yankees hired him, and now he's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
He's in the Hall of Fame. So you just don't know, because it can go the other way too.
Yeah, and I just am, whether it's Dan Quinn or not, I just don't want a defensive head coach. Just the way that the league is going and what you need for your team, what you need for your quarterback. And Dan Quinn is probably more connected than anybody. There's nobody more connected than Dan Quinn in the league. Does he have connections to a lot of really great offensive coordinators? Yeah, I'm sure that he does.
Is Dan Campbell an offensive or defensive coach?
Dan Campbell's just a coach. I mean,
But what happens when he doesn't have Ben
on
Johnson
the
and Aaron
offensive
Glenn?
side of the ball, yes, because he was a tight end.
I'm just trying to think of other coaches.
Harbaugh.
John
Is Harbaugh an offensive or defensive
he's
coach?
A special teams.
He's
He was
just
a special teams coach,
right,
yeah.
but he's more of he's the right guy to be the head coach.
Well, he was the right guy, they figured, because the special teams coach is the only coach on the roster that has a hand with everybody on the team, whether you're offense or defense. You're in my room because you're either on a punt return, kickoff return, or field goal block.
So I wonder how Dan Quinn ran it when he was heading up the Falcons. Did he run the defense, or was he, in his mind, was he like, okay, I'm going to bring in a good defense, but different guys do it different ways.
Yeah.
Chuck Texan says, could it be that during the virtual interviews with potential head coaches, they asked each one who would be their potential candidates for OC and DC? I know that would be one of my questions.
I would have to think so, right?
Yeah.
Probably so.
Who are you thinking? What does your staff look like? Who are you looking to hire? So I think those have to be questions that need to be answered, because you don't want to hire a guy that don't know who he's bringing in as his assistant coaches.
Jared in Spring Hill, Texan, says maybe not smearing Mike Vrabel, but less likely to want to hire the guy, since the Patriot system hasn't really been great since Brady left. Plus, the national media has very little depth and context when they judge Vrabel. Well, I mean, Bill Belichick's probably going to be the head coach in Atlanta. Did you get it?
I got him. I got
We've
this
been
gnat.
after a gnat
This-
all show long.
For at least 2 hours and 44 minutes. We finally got him.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, thank you. If
Stalling
you're
out.
watching, that's what I was doing.
Got him. We got him. All right, the Predators are in action tonight. They are hosting the very, very good Florida Panther team tonight. Puck drop is at 7 o'clock, so come out and hang out at Jack Daniel's Barrel House. That is where we are at today, and we will preview that Preds game tonight coming up next. Caroline, Willy, D-Mase. Hey, 102.5 and 106.3, the game is officially inviting you to our first ever Super Saturday. Join us and come hungry Saturday, February 10th at New Heights Brewing for all the soup you can handle from some of the finest restaurants in Middle Tennessee. You can bring the family and enjoy delicious soup, live music, games for kids, and more. It's our first ever Super Saturday benefiting the Nashville Predators Foundation. More details coming, including how to purchase tickets.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto for a moment here. Here are some specifics of what Loan Pronto is doing right now. Loan Pronto has a cash-out refinance rate of just 5.49%. That's a huge drop for what it has been. So if you got stuck with a rate a lot higher than that, you need to be calling 615-499-5780 right now because they can save you hundreds of dollars every month with lower payments. It's going to lower that monthly payment because your interest rate is lower. Give them a call right now if that applies to you. Or if you still have a mortgage rate in the threes originally, stick with that. And you can use Loan Pronto's Equity Express line of credit to get cash if you need to address some things like a credit card bill or a higher interest loan payment that you're trying to get down to zero. This can put you ahead of the game. They can get you thousands of dollars in just a matter of days. Either way, call today, and you could even skip your next 2 mortgage payments in the process. Several options to help you erase debt and take control of your finances in 2024. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781, 5.49%, has 6.39% APR, subject to lender approval.
Willy, D-Mase, 102.5, 106.3 The Game and the Game Nashville app out here at Jack Daniels Barrel House at Bridgestone Arena because the Predators host the Florida Panthers tonight. Puck drop at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting here at 6 p.m. on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game. Before we look ahead, Willy, quickly looking back, lose 3-2 in Arizona. What went wrong?
Well, that was a tough way to lose or finish up the road trip, end up 1-2, where that was a big swing game against a bubble team. But look, I'm not patting myself on the back here. I told you guys on Friday, Arizona is not the same Arizona you've been thinking for a long time. They keep getting better, and particularly in that building. They're 14-9 this year, and even last year when they were an awful road team, they had an excellent record. They are 36-24-5 in that building in the 2 years for whatever reason. And Barry Trotz says he thinks it's an advantage there. I don't know if that's true or not. It's the same dimensions and everything like that, but they are sneaky good in my opinion. Where they lost the game was disappointing to me. Is they had 6 power play chances. And if you take a look, right at the beginning of the game, they get a power play. They're peppering the net. They're all over the place. Haven't been able to finish. They had a chance to score 2 or 3 power play goals in that game. They go 1 for 6. That was their chance, I think, to at least get the game to overtime. But I thought Arizona, to get to their credit, they outplayed the Predators. A little quicker, played well, made a couple big plays. Nashville got screwed on one play or a tough bounce, kind of cost them. Gave them a 2-on-0. So the puck's going out of the zone. It hits a stanchion and kicks right back in front of the net, ends up being a 2-on-0. But they just got beat. And I think now if you take a look at what's happening in the recent games, they're 2-2 in their last 4 games. They've only scored 6 goals in those games. If you take a look at the analytics, they are getting enough chances to score about double that. So either they're getting a little unlucky or they're just not finishing. If you take a look past the first line, which has been very reliable all year, they're not consistently getting enough from the rest of the group. It's been Andrew Burnett was asked about it earlier today. He said, I'm seeing glimpses of it, and it leads to me believe that there's better stuff coming, but we've got to see it here if we're going to get the offense that we need to get to win. And tonight it's a great test. Speaking of Andrew Burnett, he was the guy that coached the Panthers for that one season where they had kind of a breakout, and now this is a legit Stanley Cup contender that they're going to see tonight. The one good thing that they've got going for them, the Predators, Alexander Barkov, who is a tremendous – he is the quintessential 1C that Barry Trotz would love to find in the coming years. It's hard to find those guys, but he was a high first-round pick. He's been injured. He's not on the trip, so you get to play them without that. But it's still a very, very deep team. Matthew Tkachuk and all those guys, great test tonight.
I mean, you didn't get 2 points in Arizona you probably could have used to make yourself feel a little bit more comfortable. You got a tough stretch coming up over the next few days. Starts tonight against
another
Florida.
big road trip coming. 5 more games before the All-Star break. The good news is the Kraken have lost 4 in a row. The Flames have lost the last couple, so you still have that spot. Right now there's going to be a lot of jockeying. There's a long, long way to go here.
Whole lot of hockey left. That's going to do it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Stillman & Company is up next.
Be love and love on your people. Peace.